Chapter 65. Taking a deep breath, the thundercloud force in his body slowly recovered under the effect of the four elemental energies absorbed by the Kirin orb. Bathing in the sunlight, Chiyu felt much more comfortable. Striding into the Dragonfield courtyard, he just wanted to quickly eat a big meal, then go back to his room and have a good sleep. As soon as he entered the villa's hall, Chiyu felt that something was wrong. On the sofa in the hall, Ryue was sitting there with a gloomy face. Sudong was also there. He was eating a piece of cake while talking to Ryue. When he saw Chiyu enter, he hurriedly gave him a look. Ryue's seat was facing the villa's entrance, so she saw Chiyu the moment he entered. Her dragon eyes flashed coldly. "You still know to come back?" Seeing Chiyu's tired face, she became even angrier. She suddenly stood up from the sofa. Chiyu didn't even look at her and strode upstairs. "Stop right there." A fierce dragon aura surged from behind, forcing Chiyu to stop. He turned around to look at Ryue. He saw that her beautiful face had turned pale because of anger, and her eyes were slightly red. She looked at him as if she could explode at any time. Seeing Ryue's slightly red eyes, Chiyu couldn't help but soften. "I'm very tired now. I just want to eat something and sleep. I won't go to work today." Ryue's delicate body slightly trembled. "Tired? You asked for it." "Chiyu, I didn't expect you to be so shameless. You didn't even let go of a woman like that. You don't need to explain anything to me. Sudong already told me who that woman was. If you're still a man, come with me." As she spoke, she turned around and walked outside. Sudong jumped in fright and hurriedly pulled Ryue's arm. "Ryue, don't be like this." Chiyu was still young. It was inevitable that he couldn't resist temptation. However, didn't Master say that he couldn't easily have relations with women? You have to believe in him. Ryue fiercely swung her arm, pushing Sudong back. "Don't stop me, otherwise I'll be impolite to you first. Trust him? Then tell me, a man and a woman like that stay out for a night and not come back. What can they do?" Sudong was at a loss for words. He looked at Ryue speechlessly. Chiyu walked step by step to Sudong's side. He nodded with a cold gaze and said angrily, "Ryue, I have tolerated you for a long time. All right, you lead the way. Anywhere you want. In front of Sudong, I have some things I can't say. Let's find a place today to make it clear. I'm no longer that foolish kid you bullied. Do what you want. Don't hesitate to draw the road." Sudong looked at Ryue and again looked at Chiyu. He couldn't help but feel anxious. "Chiyu, Ryue is in a fit of anger. Say less." Chiyu curled his lips. What's the use of saying less? The only way to deal with T-Rex is to use violence to curb violence. Although he clearly knew that his current condition was a lot worse because of the Thundercloud Force's consumption and his body's recent recovery. But ever since he met Ryue, the pressure he felt in his heart, as well as his dissatisfaction with Ryue, completely erupted in this instant. For the sake of a man's dignity, he had forgotten everything else. Ryue's whole body surged with dragon energy. She raised her finger and pointed at Chiyu, then pointed outside. She bounced off the ground and flashed out in the blink of an eye. Chiyu didn't show any weakness. He took a deep breath and ran the thundercloud force through his limbs. With a light flash, he shook off Sudong's obstruction and chased after her. Seeing the two of them rushing out of the villa one after another, Sudong's heart couldn't help but sink. He knew that even if he chased after them, it would be useless. Not to mention Ryue, even Chiyu's strength was now above his. What should he do now? These two guys were stubborn. If they really fought, it would be very difficult to end it. After all, Sudong was a smart person. After a short period of panic, he had a flash of inspiration and immediately had a plan. Here, there was only one person who could stop Ryue and Chiyu, and that was Master Zagru. "Yes, I'll find Master." Sudong acted as soon as he thought of it. He hurriedly ran upstairs and came to Master Zagru's room as fast as he could. It was already past 8 o'clock. Others should have already gone to school. After eating breakfast, Master also felt that the atmosphere was not right. However, he didn't say anything at that time and just quietly returned to his room. "Master, it's bad," Sudong shouted while knocking on the door. The door opened, and Master Zagru appeared with a smile on his face. Sudong, why are you so panicked? Come on. Master, we can't delay any longer. I'm afraid that Chi Yu and Hai Ruyue are fighting. They have already left. I don't know where they went. Master, what do you think we should do now? Only you can stop them. Zagru said unhurriedly, It doesn't matter. Let them be. I've already predicted that they would have this battle. Sometimes good things can turn into bad things, and sometimes bad things can also turn into good things. Sudong said with a bitter smile, But, Master, I think both of them seem to have lost their minds. The two Zodiac guardian gods are very scary when they lose their minds. No matter which one of them gets hurt, it will be a great loss for our Zodiac guardian gods. You can't just ignore it. Zagru put his palms together and said, Amit Ba, this is fate. Everything is decided by the heavens. Kirin and Dragon are already fated. Buddha is merciful. This is not a test for them, but something they must go through. You can rest assured that Kirin and Dragon will return safely before evening at the latest. Sudong had always trusted Master Zagru. It could be said that every Zodiac guardian god was the same. However, it was hard for him to believe that Chi Yu and Hai Ruyue would come back safe and sound. As soon as Chi Yu went out, he saw that Hai Ruyue's whole body was covered with white scales. The dragon wings on her back spread wide and soared into the sky. His heart was filled with anger. The anger accumulated from being beaten by Hai Ruyue, and her usual cold words made his emotions completely surpass his rationality. With a low roar, he leaped high. Black and silver streams of chi revolved around his body, and the silver in his long black hair appeared once again. When his whole body was covered with black scales, he was wrapped in a black mist and chased after Hai Ruyue. The black stream of chi gradually changed. Because it was daytime, the black stream of chi quickly turned silver. Under the sunlight, it was very difficult to see his existence from below. At this time, Hai Ryu's body was also wrapped in white mist. The two of them, one in front and one behind, quickly flew towards the east. The Dragonfield courtyard was originally located in the east of the capital. As the two of them continued to fly east, they gradually left the city, and the scenery under their feet gradually became desolate. Although Chi Yu was stimulated by the rising anger in his heart to the point of losing his rationality, he was still able to control himself. However, he also knew that it would not be easy for him to defeat Hai Ruyue with his strength, not to mention that he was not in his best condition right now. As he followed behind Hai Ruyue, he used the Kirin bead to absorb the 4 elemental energy molecules in the air to replenish his body. Although the energy consumption rate of the true metamorphosis was not slow, the speed at which he controlled the Kirin bead to absorb the energy molecules in the air had also increased due to the increase in his abilities. Overall, he was absorbing excess energy. Therefore, during the continuous flight, Chi Yu's strength was gradually recovering. The thundercloud force in his body was increasing, and his mind was gradually stabilizing. The two of them flew for nearly an hour. Although their speed was not comparable to that of a plane, it was impossible for them to catch up. Although their speed was not comparable to that of a plane, they were already far away from the capital after flying for an hour. Hai Ryue's eyes flashed, and she caught sight of a call below. She let out a loud dragon roar, and the dragon wings on her back instantly retracted. Her body was like a meteor chasing the moon as she descended. Chi Yu secretly sighed in his heart. The Kirin bead was indeed one of the top treasures in the Kirin octatic treasures. After just an hour of full absorption, his strength had already recovered a lot. If he had another hour, he might be able to recover to his best condition. However, he clearly did not have such a chance now. He faced Hai Ruyue with a heart full of anger, and his dignity as a man made it impossible for him to tell her about his body's condition. Without any hesitation, the thundercloud force under his feet moved slightly, and he followed Hai Ruyue down. Hai Ruyue floated to the ground, and the dragon wings on her back hung behind her. Seeing that Chi Yu had landed 100 meters in front of her, she did not say anything. White light surged from her body, and the dragon scales on her body rapidly changed. The white light on her chest became even more intense, and the white dragon bead emitted a huge amount of energy. In an instant, the scales on Hai Ruyue's body became a little wider. A sharp claw appeared at the tip of the open dragon wings. Two protrusions rose from the long blue hair on her head, and triangular sharp points extended from both sides of the armor on her shoulders. Her dragon eyes shone brightly, turning from blue to red like two rubies, forming a sharp contrast with the white scales on her body. This was the second stage of attribute mutation that could only be completed by 6 clouds and above. As Hai Ryue's second transformation was completed, Chiyu clearly felt a suffocating pressure coming from the slender and delicate body in front of him. Kirin's bloodline was stimulated by the Zodiac dragon's energy. Black and silver light seeped out from the gaps of the Kirin scales on Chiyu's body, forming a faint light barrier that enveloped him, resisting this powerful dragon's aura. At the same time, Chiyu slowly raised his right arm to the right side of his body. The black and silver patterns on it seemed to have come to life and constantly rotated. The Kirin bead on his chest flickered with purple, blue, red, and green lights. A faint Kirin silhouette also appeared behind him. Hai Ryue looked at Chiyu, who was confronting her, without showing any weakness. For some reason, her heart suddenly softened, and she said coldly, "I'll give you one last chance to explain. What exactly did you do when you took that lewd woman away last night?" Chiyu coldly snorted. "What business do you have with Laozi's business? Men don't explain." Hai Ryue's pupils slightly contracted. The white light barrier on her face clearly fluctuated. "Chiyu, are you worthy of Ming Ming for doing such a thing? The face of the Zodiac guardian god has been completely lost by you. I really didn't expect that you wouldn't even let go of a woman like that. I really misjudged you. Today, I will teach you a lesson on behalf of Ming Ming." "Shut up," Chiyu roared. "What's wrong with the leopard girl? What do you mean by that kind of woman? In my heart, she's no different from you. You don't need to talk about Ming Ming in front of me. I'll naturally explain it to Ming Ming. Hai Ryue, let me tell you, in my heart, the leopard girl is much better than you. What do you have to be proud of? Aren't you just born a little better?" He also possessed great strength. But what about the leopard girl? Do you know? She's a test tube baby who doesn't have any parents at all. Compared to me, an orphan, she's much more pitiful. Could it be that she was born to be ordered around by the Dark Council? If you were her, I'm afraid you wouldn't even be able to compare to her right now. In my heart, the leopard girl is much stronger than you. At least she won't be as annoying as you are. She'll always have a cold face, as if everyone owes you something. I'm also the Zodiac guardian god, and I'm even the Zodiac king. What right do you have to control me? Am I a 3-year-old child?" Hai Ryue's body trembled slightly, and even her voice was trembling. "In your heart, am I not even comparable to that leopard girl? Just because you pitted her, you want to bed with her? Don't tell me that you've forgotten what the great master once said. With your current condition, having a relationship with a woman will harm her?" Chiyu snorted disdainfully. "I already said, you don't have to care about my matters, just like I don't care about you. Have you ever heard of a joke? A long time ago, there was an old couple. Their son finally got married. On the night of their son's wedding, the old couple was worried that their son wouldn't do the deed on the bed, so they quietly went to the window outside their son and daughter-in-law's room to eavesdrop. They heard their son teasing his daughter-in-law in a low voice. 'Wife, you're so beautiful. What you have down there's like an exquisite jade ring.' The daughter-in-law said to her son, 'Hubby, you're not bad too. What you have down there is simply a high-spirited golden pillar.' When the old couple outside the house heard that their son and daughter-in-law had already entered a state, they couldn't help but feel a little excited. Coupled with the obscene voices in the room, they couldn't help but feel a little restless. The granny said to her father-in-law, 'Old man, do you think I look like a jade ring?' The eunuch snorted disdainfully and said, 'Look like a fart. You're already old and yellow. At most, you're a broken pot.' When the granny heard this, she was furious and said, 'All right, old thing. If mine is a broken pot, yours is a broom.' Under the mutual ridicule, they had already forgotten where they were and couldn't help but start quarreling. The son and daughter-in-law in the room heard the commotion outside. His son shouted, 'Hey, who's outside?' The The eunuch was in a fit of anger, so he immediately replied, "Mind your own business. You're allowed to wear jade rings and gold pillars, but we're not allowed to brush the broken pot with a broom?" After hearing the joke, Ryue couldn't help but be stunned. "Chiyu, what do you mean by telling me this?" Chiyu sneered and said, "It's nothing. I just think that this joke is suitable for us, but it should be the other way around. Only you and your vice chief Zhang Jiuxiao are allowed to sweep the broken pot with a broom. Don't tell me that I and a leopard girl are not allowed to wear jade rings and gold pillars." Even if Ryue was slow-witted in this aspect, he still understood what he meant. The white dragon chi around his body suddenly erupted in an extremely unstable manner, and he let out an angry roar. "Chiyu, I will kill you." In her extreme anger, her attacks no longer had any order to them. The enormous dragon chi blotted out the sky and covered the earth as it surged towards Chiyu. Ryue's right fist suddenly condensed into a ball of white light the size of a basketball and smashed straight towards Chiyu's chest. After Chiyu finished mocking Ryue, he felt extremely carefree in his heart. Seeing that Ryue, who had been angered by him, was attacking him with all her might, he did not have the slightest intention of retreating. Kirin's chi around his body surged back like 10,000 horses galloping, blocking Ryue's incoming dragon chi. He also swung out his right fist. The black and silver lights on his right arm were completely restrained and did not have the powerful might of Ryue's punch. Kirin's arm, Skybreaker. Chiyu's body was almost flying close to the ground. He let out a roar, and even though he had moved later, he arrived first. His punch had already met Ryue's attack with all his might. Ryue's dragon chi was obviously stronger than Chiyu's Kirin's chi. As soon as the two streams of air came into contact, Chiyu's Kirin's chi was swept back. However, Chiyu did not intend to defeat Ryue in terms of overall strength. What he wanted was to use his Kirin's chi to give him the opportunity to throw out a punch. After all, Kirin's most powerful part was still his right arm. Kirin's arm. Both of them were furious, and they did not hold back in their attacks. When their fists collided, they could feel each other's intense anger at such a close distance. With a loud bang, Chiyu's body was sent flying. The huge dragon chi continuously pressed against his body from all directions. However, Chiyu's Kirin's armor displayed its superb defensive ability. No matter how the dragon chi attacked, it could steadily protect Chiyu's body from harm. However, Chiyu could not help but spit out a mouthful of blood amidst the violent shock. At the same time, when Chiyu's body was sent flying, Ryue didn't feel good either. Even though she was also a Zodiac guardian, she didn't know much about Kirin. Even Zagru didn't know what abilities Chiyu had. Both of their right fists collided. Ryue clearly felt that her attack, which was full of energy, felt as if it had hit a diamond. Her entire right arm was in so much pain that it felt like it was going to split apart. Her right fist had already lost all feeling from the shock. In a violent shock, although she stubbornly did not retreat to resolve the impact, she still could not help but spit out a mouthful of blood. Ryue's strongest move was not to use her fists to forcefully attack. Using her weakness to attack the enemy's strength, the result could be imagined. Chiyu's body flew backwards. He was very clear about the current situation, even though he himself had been shaken by Ryue's punch to the point that his internal organs felt like they were on fire. However, at the same time, he was also very clear that Ryue would definitely suffer more serious injuries than him. Kirin's arm's title as the strongest was not just for show. With the strength of Kirin's arm, he had already resolved too much of the impact for Chiyu. The last part of the training in the Taklamakan Desert had taught Chiyu a lesson. No matter what the situation was, one must never give the enemy a chance to catch their breath. Even if the attack would hurt one's body, one must still give the enemy a sustained and effective blow, completely defeating them in one go. The black and silver lights were forcefully activated by Chiyu. The thundercloud force with 4 attributes dispersed Ryue's weakened dragon energy. Chiyu did a backflip and stopped steadily in midair. His eyes had already turned dark purple. The Kirin pearl in front of his chest had also turned the same color. Purple electric currents continuously flashed around his body. When Ryue realized that something was wrong, Chiyu, who had just stabilized his body, had already roared, "Kirin's 100 lightning strikes." When a woman had sex with several men at the same time, that situation could be called a mass shooting. When hundreds of lightning bolts bombarded a target at the same time, it could also be called a mass shooting. As thick as a human arm, twisted purple lightning bolts instantly emitted from Chiyu's body. Some of them were in straight lines, some were in arcs, and some were even twisting to the side. However, their final target was only one, and that was Ryue's body. Seeing the sudden lightning bolts, Ryue's eyes revealed a trace of surprise. She instinctively squatted down, and a layer of thick white dragon energy spread out. With her body as the center, it formed a white light barrier with a diameter of 3 meters and a height of 2 meters. Under the control of Chi-Yu's spiritual power, the lightning bolts bombarded the same target without hesitation. The deep sound of thunder made Chi-Yu's heart overjoyed. "Hi, Ryue. Oh, hi, Ryue. As long as you are paralyzed by my lightning bolts, I will teach you a lesson." The duration of the 100 lightning strikes was very short. After the attack, Chi-Yu's face obviously became much uglier. The large consumption of thundercloud force made him pant. Using the 100 lightning strikes to connect with Kirin's arms attack was the best method he could think of. He was very clear that in the current situation where he did not have enough thundercloud force in his body, he had to end the battle quickly if he wanted to defeat Ryue. Otherwise, he would lose all his chances. However, when the 100 lightning strikes completely bombarded the white dragon energy that Ryue had condensed, what surprised Chiyu was that the dragon energy did not look like when it was condensed. After the bombardment, it was as if nothing had changed. Faintly, he had a bad feeling in his heart. He also clearly realized that he must have calculated wrongly. A cold voice came from the dragon energy. Ryue slowly straightened her body. That's right. Lightning energy is one of the most powerful types of energy. However, it is ineffective against me. She did not seem to have changed at all. Even the dragon scales on her body did not have any traces of being struck by lightning. Chi was dumbfounded. "No, this is impossible. My 100 lightning strikes concentrated a large amount of energy. Not to mention that you were injured. Even if you were in perfect condition, you would not be able to block it so easily." Ryue laughed. Her laughter was full of mockery. "That's right. Your punch was indeed very strong. However, let me teach you a lesson. The wind follows the dragon, and the clouds follow the tiger. You should have heard of these two phrases before. To put it simply, as a tiger, Su Dong is naturally immune to all wind energy. What is the basis of lightning? It's the clouds. Without the friction of the clouds, how can there be lightning? No matter where your lightning energy comes from. I can tell you that it's impossible for your lightning to hurt me, because dragons are naturally immune to lightning. F***CK your lungs." Chiyu cursed. He had used a large amount of thundercloud force to launch an attack, but it was met with Ryue's immunity. The opportunity was lost. Even if he used Blazing Purgatory now, it was too late. Moreover, his thundercloud force was already very weak. If he wanted to use Blazing Purgatory, he had to consider how to deal with Ryue's attack after his thundercloud force was used up. Ryue did not give Chiyu too much time to think. The wings on her back instantly retracted. In a flash, she appeared in front of Chiyu. Her hands drew an arc in the air. One grabbed Chiyu's shoulder, and the other grabbed Chiyu's throat. Her movements were as fast as lightning. The white energy on the dragon claws made a pu-pu sound. Before the claws reached, the sharp wind had already stimulated the Kirin armor on Chiyu's body. Black mist rose. Chiyu coldly snorted. He immediately had a plan. He put his left hand behind his back and raised his right arm. He allowed Ryue's claws to grab his right shoulder, while his right palm blocked the claw that was going for his throat. Ding! Sparks flew. Ryue's left dragon claw was shaken by the strong force from Chiyu's shoulder. Her right dragon claw had not recovered from the previous punch from Chiyu. It was just a feint. Seeing that Chiyu blocked it, she immediately pulled back, and her right knee directly hit Chiyu's lower abdomen. Chi-Yu's mind was completely immersed in his right arm. He took half a step back, and his right arm, which was slightly thicker than his left arm, started to move quickly. The black and silver light intertwined with his right arm seemed to be everywhere, and every time it flickered, it would accurately block one of Hai Ryue's attacks. If Hai Ryue's twin dragon claws were normal, maybe Chi-Yu would have a hard time blocking them. However, her right dragon claws were heavily injured, so she could only use a few feints. The real attack power came from her left dragon claws and legs. However, her legs were longer, so when she wanted to attack, her speed was much slower than her hands. As a result, Chi-Yu only used his right hand, and used the technique that Zhou Tianlu had used, which could barely block Hai Ryue's storm-like attacks. Chi-Yu had no choice but to use his right arm. Right now, his thundercloud force was greatly weakened, and the only thing that could contend against Hai Ryue was the tyrannical strength of Kirin's arm. Using this opportunity, he could also use the Kirin bead to absorb some of the 4 types of energy to replenish himself. Hai Ryue could only see palm images that filled the sky. That black and silver light intertwined with each other was like a nightmare to her. No matter how she used her body to attack, he would always be able to accurately block in front of her. Combined with Chi-Yu's profound footwork, she was unable to effectively hit his body, especially when she came into contact with his right palm. The hard and energetic feeling made her hands and feet go numb. When did this guy have such great strength? In fact, she did not know that Chi-Yu did not dare to fully display the power of Kirin's arm. This was because he was afraid that after his attack, the thundercloud force would no longer be enough to maintain the origin mutation. At that time, as long as Hai Ryue still had the ability to fight, he would definitely lose. Although she did not expect Chi-Yu to have such a strong close combat ability, Hai Ryue still reacted quickly. She kicked Chi-Yu's right palm and used the rebound force to jump up high. A white light condensed at the same time as her body rose up. Chi-Yu only felt that the pressure around his body lightened, as though all the dragon energy had been sucked away by the white light ball in front of Hai Ryue's chest. Instead of feeling happy, Chi-Yu was shocked. Looking at the situation in front of him, he immediately realized that Hai Ryue was going to use her strongest move, Dragon Wing Starburst. This method of condensing energy was obviously the first move of Dragon Wing Starburst. Although he knew what Hai Ryue was going to do, he was suffering from the lack of thundercloud force in his body, so he could not attack Hai Ryue. Helplessly, he could only watch as the light ball in front of Hai Ryue's chest turned into countless light spots. Under the flapping of Dragon Wing Starburst, a large area covered a radius of 10 meters around him. Even Kirin could not completely dodge the lightning-like speed. After all, the light spots were too dense. Just when the light spots were about to reach his body, Chi-Yu suddenly shouted and jumped up from the ground. Kirin read. The fiery red light instantly burned. Chi-Yu's body that had jumped up turned into a ball in the air, minimizing the surface area of the force as much as possible. He relied on the double defense ability of Kirin Red and Kirin Armor to resist the Dragon Wing Starburst, while he rushed towards Hai Ryue in the air with the help of Thundercloud Force. Only those who had truly endured the attack of Dragon Wing Starburst could feel how terrifying its attack power was. Streams of sharp and tyrannical aura passed through Kirin Red and Kirin Armor, but it still brought intense pain to Chi-Yu. His originally rapid upward momentum suddenly slowed down a lot under the effect of the impact. The pain that came from his soul made his mouth and nose bleed. Using his body to take the attack of a Zodiac Guardian that had reached the strength of 6 clouds was definitely not a good choice. Makino Meteor. Chi-Yu knew how to use the opportunity and seize it. How could Hai Ryue, who also had rich combat experience, not know how to do it? Seeing that Chi-Yu's upward momentum had slowed down and that he was powerless in the air, Hai Ryue did not hesitate to use the second attack of Dragon Wing Starburst. With a deafening dragon roar, Hai Ryue's body had already turned into a white meteor. After the previous Dragon Wing Starburst, she directly hit Chi-Yu's curled-up body. Chapter 66. Black and silver light surged from Chi-Yu's body to his right arm. The energy of the Kirin arm was instantly raised to the peak that he could reach. Naturally, he would not use the ultimate Kirin arm. After all, no matter how hateful Hai Ryua was, she was still his comrade. However, the Kirin arm that had condensed all of his thundercloud force was still terrifying. Chiyu sinisterly kept his right arm under his body. When Hai Ryua's Makino meteor was about to hit him, he instantly puffed out his chest, stood up, and punched out with full energy. Hai Ryua was shocked to see that Chiyu's right arm had actually swelled up a lot more than before. The scales on his arm had completely stood up, and a terrifying aura rushed towards her. Unfortunately, when she realized that the energy that Chiyu could use was much stronger than she had expected, she had no chance to change her move. The Makino meteor was extremely fast. Hai Ryua gritted her teeth and gathered all of her dragon power to meet it. The moment the white light and the black and silver light collided in the air, both Chiyu and Hai Ryua had the same feeling. It was like Mars colliding with Earth. A circle of distorted light spread out in all directions from the center of the collision. Their bodies froze for a moment, and then they rebounded like cannonballs. Hai Ryua also vomited blood. More than 70% of the dragon scales on her body turned into spots of white light and disappeared. If she had not tried her best to protect the most important parts of her body, she would have been completely naked by now. A layer of blood appeared on her exposed, delicate skin. The light barrier on her face disappeared, and the protrusion on the top of her head disappeared. Her face had turned pale as she flew backwards in the air. She could only barely open the dragon wings on her back. She controlled her body so that she would not crash into the mountain behind her. Hai Ryua was in a miserable state, but Chiyu was in a worse state. Hai Ryua could still use her dragon wings to control her body to float in the air, but Chiyu crashed in the mountain behind him like a cannonball. With a loud bang, soil and rocks flew everywhere. Chiyu's entire body was embedded into the mountain wall. The black and silver light had completely disappeared. Hai Ryua slowly landed on the ground. Right now, if she was not careful, there was a possibility that she would fall. Her body was trembling slightly. Her right arm had completely lost feeling, and her left arm was not much better. Ever since she obtained the power of a dragon, this was the first time she felt so weak. She knelt on the ground on one knee and gasped for breath. There was a trace of regret in her eyes. She did not know how Chiyu was doing, but at the same time, she knew how much dragon power she had used in that attack. At this moment, she was at a loss. Kirin's arm's aura had invaded her body. Even breathing caused her entire body to ache. All of her meridians were injured. If Chiyu's power was just a little bit stronger, she would have died from bleeding from her orifices. Was Kirin really that strong? Even her second stage, origin mutation, couldn't block his attack. Why did she have to do this? Chiyu was definitely not going to die. However, it would not be easy for her to dig him out and bring him back to Dragonfield Courtyard. With her current state, Chiyu's body was a meter deep into the mountain wall. The Kirin red and Kirin armor on his body had already disappeared, and countless tiny bloodstains appeared on every part of his body. His naked body did not feel any pain, but rather numbness. At the last moment before he was sent flying, he summoned Kirin. At this moment, the Qilin concealment was behind him. In terms of defense, Kirin was definitely not as good as Kirin Red. However, it was precisely because of Kirin Yin's defense that Chiyu did not faint. Even after suffering such a heavy injury, he was still able to remain conscious. The purplish-black palm print on his chest was still clear. The leopard girl's palm strike was extremely ruthless. Although Chiyu's recovery ability was astonishing, the marks she left behind were not something that could be removed in a day or two. Chiyu had almost stopped breathing. This was the first time his Kirin arm felt pain. Fortunately, the pain was not very intense. However, he had already lost all of his thundercloud force. His entire body could only be embedded in the mountain wall, unable to move at all. Chi was not depressed right now. Instead, he was a little excited because at the same time he was sent flying, he could clearly see the dragon scales on Hai Ryua's body flying under the full force attack of his Kirin arm. To be able to beat her into such a sorry state, he should be satisfied. If he was in his peak condition, he might really be able to defeat this Tyrannosaurus Rex. The Kirin Pearl was indeed a treasure of heaven and earth. Without Chi-Yu deliberately activating it, it had already changed from absorbing the 4 attributes of Thundercloud Force to absorbing the Water Thundercloud Force alone. This was because only the Water Thundercloud Force had the effect of healing. This was the energy that Chi-Yu needed the most right now. Time passed second by second. Hai Ryue had already retracted her origin mutation and changed into a clean set of clothes to recover her strength. Naturally, Chi-Yu was not idle in the mountain wall either, relying on the Water Thundercloud Force absorbed by the Kirin Pearl to heal his injuries. His meridians were recovering their senses one by one. However, the recovery of his senses was not a wonderful thing. What followed was an almost unbearable pain. In this aspect, Chi-Yu, who had been to the Taklamakan Desert before, was much better than Hai Ryue. Although his pain was greater than Hai Ryue's, he could still grit his teeth and endure it. The sun had gradually risen from the east to the middle of the sky. The winter temperature was a little low. Although Chi-Yu's Thundercloud Force was recovering his body, he was still a little frozen. After all, without enough Thundercloud Force to protect his body, he would not be able to fight against the forces of nature. After a few hours of recovery, Hai Ryue's body was no longer trembling. After calming down, she began to worry about Chi-Yu. This guy did not react at all after being blasted into the mountain wall. Could he have fainted? The weather is so cold. It would be bad if something happened to him. Hai Ryue felt a slight pain in her heart and cursed in her heart. Chi-Yu, you bastard. Why must you provoke my anger? As she thought about it, she slowly stood up and walked toward the mountain wall step by step. Hai Ryue's ability had just recovered about 20%, although her current overall strength was stronger than Chi-Yu's when it came to recovery speed. Who could compare to Ink Kirin? The mountain wall was not steep. It was semi-slanted. Hai Ryue did not use her dragon power. She only relied on her agility to slowly climb about 15 meters up the mountain wall because Chi-Yu was there. When Hai Ryue arrived at the place where Chi-Yu had fallen, she could not help but feel sour in her heart. Chi-Yu looked as miserable as could be. There was a layer of coagulated blood on his skin. Although the small wounds had already stopped bleeding from the surface, his entire body was purplish red. In particular, the shocking palm print on his chest caused Hai Ryue's heart to tremble. She knew very well that it was not caused by her attack. Could it be that he was already injured before the battle? Thinking of this possibility, Hai Ryue suddenly felt a sense of fear. If that was really the case, if he had to suffer such a heavy blow from me, I'm afraid he... Thinking of this, Hai Ryue became anxious. She gathered the dragon power that had not recovered much and carefully pressed it against the mountain wall around Chi-Yu's body. Because Chi-Yu's body was stuck in a mountain, she had to first get rid of the surrounding rocks if she wanted to save him. In order to prevent Chi-Yu's body from getting stuck, Hai Ryue was indeed powerful. Although her dragon power was far from its peak, under the effect of the white light, the stone wall around Chi-Yu's body still turned into powder and rolled down. Hai Ryue used one hand to suck her body into the mountain wall, while the other hand wrapped the dragon power around Chi-Yu's body and carefully pulled him out. When she pulled Chi-Yu out, she secretly heaved a sigh of relief, because she saw Kirin-In on Chi-Yu's back. With Kirin-In as a cushion, the wounds on Chi-Yu's back were far less than before. Hai Ryue carefully carried Chi-Yu in her arms and lightly leaped out of the mountain wall. Her feet touched the mountain wall, and she landed lightly on the ground. She had only used a little dragon power, but her face was a little pale. As she panted, she hurriedly took off her coat and wrapped it around Chi-Yu's naked body. Inadvertently, her gaze fell on Chi-Yu's lower body, causing Hai Ryue's pretty face to blush. She looked around and stopped in a sheltered place with Chi-Yu in her arms. She pressed her hands on Chi-Yu's chest and felt the aura in his body. Chi-Yu's body had long since become ice cold. Hai Ryue listened attentively, but could barely hear his weak heartbeat. Not dead yet, not dead yet. 2 drops of tears flowed down her face. Chi-Yu, why do you always have to hurt my heart? You scoundrel, you bastard. I don't even understand what's so attractive about you. Why is it that in my heart, you always have an unshakable position? You fool, you bastard. First it was Ming Ming, then it was the leopard girl, And you even have a relationship with that girl in my company. Could it be that Kirin really can't be faithful? Ryue's voice was filled with sorrow. From what she knew, Chiyu was currently unconscious, and there was no one else around, so she spoke her mind without any scruples. But how could she know that the ruffian in her arms was completely conscious at this moment? Chiyu was indeed very cold. His body was frozen stiff, and the condensed thundercloud force could only protect the most important organs in his body, as well as heal the damaged meridians in his body. He could not move, but his mind was completely awake. When he realized that Ryue had come to save him, he hurriedly retracted his aura, afraid that the T-Rex would discover his situation. Chiyu's calculations were very good. As long as he recovered his ability to attack, he would be able to sneak an attack on Ryue at such a close distance. At that time, wouldn't everything be up to him? However, Chiyu, who was brewing a conspiracy in his heart, never thought that Ryue would say such words. Although he was unwilling to admit it, he knew that in this kind of situation, Ryue was naturally speaking from the bottom of his heart. It can't be she seems to mean. As Ryue spoke, she did not stop moving. She waved her right hand and used most of her dragon power, which had not recovered much, to create a deep pit on the leeward side of the wind. Then, she carefully carried Chiyu and jumped down. Her current physical condition was better than Chiyu's, but because the thundercloud force was too weak, her ability to resist the cold was not strong. However, as soon as they entered the deep pit, she did not hesitate to hug Chiyu tightly. Then, she covered Chiyu's back with her coat and used the last of her dragon power to stimulate her body to release heat to warm up Chiyu's body. The warm feeling almost made Chiyu moan in comfort, especially when he was in such close contact with Ryue. He could clearly feel the astonishing fullness of Ryue's chest. At the same time, he also realized that Ryue's body was trembling slightly, and her teeth were chattering. Needless to say, she was also very cold. Chiyu snorted in his heart. He thought to himself, "Are you going to give me a candy after using the stick? Ryue, don't expect me to believe you. That's right, I don't believe that you are interested in me. If you are interested in me, what's up with that deputy general manager? If you are interested in me, would you be so heavy-handed?" Ryue hugged Chiyu's body. She could clearly feel that her body was getting colder and colder. Especially the coldness coming from Chiyu's body, it made her shiver. But at this time, she still did not forget to inquire about Chiyu's current situation. However, Chiyu had been carefully restraining his aura. With her current state, how could she discover Chiyu's true state? If Chiyu could see it now, he would definitely find that Ryue's eyes were no longer cold. Her gentle eyes were filled with anxiety. "Chiyu, you're not really freezing, are you? You bastard. Nothing can happen to you. Do you think I want to beat you up? You're really an abominable bastard. You actually compared me to a broken pot. At that time, I really had the urge to kill you. Don't you know what it means to love deeply, to be responsible deeply? I'm a woman. I know that after we first met, when I hit you, you already hated me. I never expected anything to happen between us. I'm happy for you and Ming Ming from the bottom of my heart, but you can't hurt me again and again. You bastard, hurry up and wake up, or else I'll never forgive you." As Ryue spoke, she unbuttoned her underwear and took off all her clothes. She took off her clothes and used them as a cushion. Then, she pressed her soft and delicate body against Chiyu's cold body. Her small coat completely covered Chiyu's body, while her back was completely exposed. Her back was facing the big hole that she had blasted out, silently enduring the cold. When Ryue's delicate body pressed against Chiyu's, Chiyu only felt that his mind was blank. That warm, delicate body, that smooth skin, under Ryue's constant trembling, was tightly pressed against him. Although she had only removed the clothes that were not thick, it felt like she had entered a completely different world. At this moment, Chiyu had already forgotten everything. He had forgotten all the hatred between him and Ryue. His heart was completely shaken by Ryue's actions. She loves me. If that wasn't the case, how could she do this? She used her own body to help me warm up. She is now seriously injured, but she gave me a thick coat. Ryue, was I wrong? Did I misjudge you? Ryua, what is going on? Chiyu's heart trembled violently. He suddenly realized that his perception might be wrong. Perhaps he was really wrong, and very wrong. He thought of Hai Ryua's concern for him in the past. He thought of how she and Su Dong traveled thousands of miles to the Sun Nation to save him. He also thought of how Hai Ryua looked at him every time. Chiyu's heart gradually became clear. He knew that he was really wrong. Hai Ryua was not as hateful as he thought. Ryua's body trembled more and more violently. She had given all her heat to Chiyu. Her dragon power recovery speed could no longer keep up with the speed at which the cold was taking away her body heat. As her body became colder and colder, Ryua's red lips had already turned a little purple. Her delicate body trembled less, but her eyes were still on Chiyu's face. Her head was pressed against Chiyu's chest, although her body was very cold. As a girl, her heart was very warm at this moment. For some reason, although Chiyu's chest was ice cold, his heart was very calm as he leaned against her. But leaning on her, his heart was very calm, as if he had finally found the harbor that he had been looking forward to. She only hoped that Chiyu's heartbeat would become clearer. Then, she would be satisfied. Ryua, Chiyu called out softly with difficulty. After thinking through some things, he could no longer hide his aura calmly. You're awake. Ryua looked up in surprise. Her movements were a little stiff, and her pretty face blushed. However, her arms around Chiyu's body were as firm as ever. She had no intention of letting go. Ryua, don't be like this. Your body won't be able to bear it. The moment Chiyu opened his eyes, he could clearly see everything in front of him. Hai Ryua's exposed back had already turned a greenish-white color. The temperature of her exposed back and the front of her body that was stuck close to him were two completely different things. Hai Ryua gave him a deep look and said, "Don't say anything. Hurry up and let yourself recover." Chiyu took a deep breath and said, "Ryua, I have clothes. Cover them first." He was not like Hai Ryua, who could only hide her clothes behind her scales and dragon pearl after her original attribute mutation. With the help of Kirin Pearl, he could bring as much as he wanted. He urged the little water thundercloud force to enter Kirin Pearl. With a flash of light, several thick clothes appeared out of thin air between the two of them. With these thick layers of barriers, for some reason, a sense of loss rose in their hearts at the same time. Chiyu's clothes were much wider than Hai Ryua's. Hai Ryua pulled a few clothes from his body and put one on her body. She then put two more on Chiyu's side, hiding both of their bodies in the cotton clothes. She looked at Chiyu. Their eyes moved, but neither of them spoke. They just looked at each other. From each other's eyes, they could see 3 parts awkwardness, 3 parts concern, and 4 parts bewilderment. I think now we should be able to have a good talk. Hai Ryua was the first to break the deadlock. She lowered her head and no longer looked at Chiyu, because she suddenly remembered the way the two of them were together. Although they did not touch each other, the feeling of their skin touching each other had become even stronger. I understand what you want to know. All right, I'll tell you. Actually, I didn't have that kind of relationship with the leper girl last night. She is indeed pitiful, even more pitiful than an orphan like me. After I heard her description of her life, I originally wanted to help her, but who knew that I would accidentally make a mistake and cause her to misunderstand? Having lived in the Dark Council since she was young, it was inevitable that she would be a little sensitive. So, you can see that the mark on my chest was left by her. There was another one behind me. At that time, she destroyed my central nervous system. However, I was the one who caused the misunderstanding. I don't hate her. One of the new abilities that I cultivated was specialized in healing injuries. At that time, my cloud power was still sufficient, so it took me an entire night to heal the injuries that she had inflicted on me. Thus, when I returned, it was already morning. Think about it. How could a person who had just recovered from serious injury not look tired? But if you want to go astray, what can I do? You're too reckless to sentence me to death without even investigating the matter clearly. After regaining his rationality, coupled with the indescribable feeling between him and Ryua, Chiyu naturally wouldn't hide anything. Of course, he wouldn't say the part where he exploded. As a man, he had to have some white lies. Hai Ryua stared blankly at Chiyu, then looked at the palm print on his chest and said with a strange voice, "Then when you fought with me just now, you didn't recover to your best condition, did you?" Chiyu laughed bitterly. "Of course I'm not a god. How can I recover so easily? Otherwise, I wouldn't have fought you head-on. Although you are strong, in terms of agility, you are clearly inferior to me, who has 4 types of attributes. If I was in my best condition, I would definitely use guerrilla warfare to exhaust your dragon power, then find a chance to attack you. But don't think too much. The reason why you were injured by me was because you weren't familiar with my ability. My strongest ability isn't the 4 attributes of Thundercloud Force. It's my Kirin arm, which is my right arm. Kirin arm is the strongest point of Kirin's life. Even if I have the strength of 9 clouds in the future, it will still be the same. It's just that, at that time, only the ultimate Kirin arm will be the strongest. Naturally, you won't be able to gain any advantage when you're fighting with my strongest point. Ryue, you're too stubborn. If you reserve a little strength to fight with me just now, I wouldn't be able to sustain just by exhausting you." Hyrule lowered her head and said, "At that time, I was almost angered to death by you. Who would have the time to care about that? Chiyu, you bastard. Why did you say that I'm a broken pot? Give me an explanation." As she said that, she slowly raised her head. The anger in her eyes reappeared. About this, I don't know why either. At that time, you were very angry, and I was also very impulsive. All along, you bullied me a lot. I came back with serious injuries, and the moment I entered the door, you wanted to drag me out to fight. What's more, your relationship with that deputy general manager is unclear. I just thought about it. That's why I said that. Can I take it back? Looking at Chiyu, Hyrule couldn't help but get angry. You still say that I didn't investigate the matter clearly. Could it be that you're very clear about it? Do you know that the deputy general manager you're talking about is actually my brother? What's wrong with me letting my brother hug me? Furthermore, at that time, I cried because I was angered by you. That's why my brother comforted me." Chiyu looked at Hyrule in shock. What did you say? He's your brother? Impossible. Don't lie to me. Your surname is Hai. His surname is Zhang. How could the two of you be brother and sister? Hyrule somewhat proudly looked at Chiyu's shocked expression. How is it impossible? Haven't you heard that siblings can take their father's surname and mother's surname? Do you want me to show you the household register later? Chiyu really wanted to find a hole to hide himself. With Hyrue's explanation, he originally felt that he should be in the right, but now his grievance disappeared. Looking at the smile on Hyrue's face, he was so embarrassed that he couldn't say a word. Hyrule lowered her head, getting close to Chiyu, and said, "You look so much cuter when you're embarrassed." Chiyu, let me ask you a question. At that time, when you saw me and my brother hugging together, were you jealous? Yes, I was jealous. But even I don't understand why I would be jealous because of you, the T-Rex. Feeling the faint fragrance on Hyrue's body, Chiyu couldn't help but feel confused. Hyrue's pretty face blushed. She slightly hesitated, and then said in a low voice, "Chiyu, if my temper was as gentle as Ming Ming's, would you like me?" At this time, she clearly remembered her brother's words. Happiness, you have to rely on yourself to fight for it. Now in this somewhat ambiguous environment, perhaps because of the stimulation of the senses, she finally put down her dignity and asked the question that she always wanted to ask in her heart. Listening to Hyrue's question, Chiyu almost without hesitation said, "Of course I will. I'm not a fool. You are one of the most perfect women I've ever seen. The only flaw is your annoying temper. If you can be more gentle, I really can't find your flaw. Not to mention me. I'm afraid that any man would be attracted to you." Hyrule smiled, although she also knew what Chiyu's answer would be. But when it really came from his mouth, she still felt a strong sense of satisfaction in her heart. She slowly lowered her body. Quietly lying on Chiyu's chest, she softly said, "Chiyu, when I first saw you, I really hated you. I kept telling myself that you were Kirin, no matter how annoying your character is, for the sake of protecting the East, for the sake of our Zodiac guardian god. I must endure. Later, I beat you up. Do you still remember? At that time, there were actually 2 reasons for beating you up. One, I hoped that you would have a stronger ability to withstand damage, and the other, Maybe it was also because of my hatred for you. But soon, I had a whole new level of respect for you. As a ruffian, you have a stubborn temper. In the face of my strength, you did not show any weakness. At that time, I thought that you still had a future. But soon, you made me feel very funny because you were actually afraid of heights. It was really funny. The dignified king of the Zodiac is actually afraid of heights. Chiyu smiled bitterly. Who said that the king of the Zodiac can't be afraid of heights? Su Dong is a sissy, but he still flirts with girls. Can't you be serious? You're always like a ruffian all day long. Hyrule lightly punched Chiyu's shoulder, but her tone did not seem to blame Chiyu at all. The more time I spent with you, the more your shortcomings were gradually covered by the brilliance you emitted. It is precisely because of your appearance that the number of Zodiac Guardian God warriors increased, and our strength also increased rapidly. The battle with the 4 major families was the one that surprised me the most. I could not imagine that in just a short period of a month, you could actually reach the strength of Sanyun. It is simply incredible. Moreover, as a Sanyun, you actually suppressed the leaders of the 4 major families. And in the end, you used a tyrannical ability that no one knows where to completely shock them. Chiyu. But Ryue, after that time, I did not see any surprise on your face. Ryue said with a wry smile, because after that time, I have been restraining my emotions. Don't think that I like you because of the powerful strength you displayed. You are wrong. You're wrong. The real reason I have feelings for you is because of what happened between you and Mingming. Me and Mingming? What does that have to do with you? Chiyu asked curiously. Of course it has nothing to do with me. But do you remember? At that time, you actually wanted to kill all the people from the 4 major families because of Mingming. This is simply unimaginable. But at that time, whether it was the people from the 4 major families or us, no one doubted your strength. The aura you emitted at that time was the strongest I have ever seen in my life. After that, we found you in the basement where you used to live. When we found out that you actually fed your own blood to Mingming, causing you to lose consciousness due to excessive blood loss. Not only me, but every Zodiac Guardian God warrior was deeply shocked. Didn't you notice? Whether it was Su Dong or Xiao Yi, when they called you boss, it was completely from the bottom of their hearts. And it was also at that time that I was attracted by your actions. You are worthy of my love to be able to make such a huge sacrifice for your companion. Chapter 67. Ryue raised her head to look at Chiyu, and she was also looking at her. You bastard, did you hear what I said just now? How did you know? Chiyu got carried away and blurted out. After saying that, he realized something was wrong. Ryue was obviously tricking him. Ryue's pretty face blushed. You really heard it. Then were you pretending to faint at that time? Ryu, listen to me. I did hear it, but my body's really badly injured now. I couldn't open my eyes or speak at that time. So Ryu rolled her eyes at him and said, Didn't you say that meant don't explain? Forget it. I heard it then. In any case, I've already said what I need to say. Don't worry. I won't destroy the relationship between you and Mingming. But I will help Mingming supervise you. Hearing Ryu mention Mingming, Chiyu's expression changed. Ryue, when we go back, I will confess to Mingming. Sometimes, feelings can't be judged by reason. Even I don't know when I have feelings for you. Maybe it's because you're too beautiful. When I saw you and your brother hugging each other, at that time, I really wanted to rush up and kill your brother. It was as if a ball of dynamite was ignited in my heart. But I don't want to admit it, because in my subconscious, I always thought that I should hate you. After all, when you first beat me up, you left a very bad impression on me. But it seems that I was wrong. I am a man. I must bravely bear my feelings. Maybe it's a gift from the heavens. I have Kirin's bloodline. Mingming is a good girl who understands things. Later, I will confess to her and see her reaction. Ryue's pretty face turned red. You greedy guy. Chiyu laughed and said, Is there a man who isn't greedy? I'm afraid it hasn't been born yet. Ryue sighed and closed her eyes. I don't want to think about anything now. Let's talk about the future in the future. Chiyu took a deep look at her. He suddenly realized that the Tyrannosaurus Rex, who had always been strong, also had a weak side. In his arms, she was simply a pitiful beauty. Ryue, I'm a little cold, Chiyu whispered. Hai Ryue was shocked and looked at Chi-Yu with concern. What should we do? Is it cold to wear so many clothes? My dragon power hasn't recovered yet. What should he do? Did you bring your phone? Call Su Dong and ask him to pick us up? Chi-Yu said, I didn't bring it. You probably didn't either. Ryue, actually, when you hugged me like that before, I felt much warmer. Just like how I felt before I woke up. Ryue's delicate body trembled slightly. Of course she knew what Chi-Yu was referring to. Looking at the light of hope in his eyes, Ryue's eyes became unusually soft. She reached out a hand and gently covered Chi-Yu's eyelids. Then, she closed his eyelids. Chi-Yu only felt Ryue move slightly beside him. His body felt cold, and the clothes covering his body were lifted. Before he opened his eyes, a smooth and delicate body had already squeezed in. The clothes that were previously on Ryue were now covering his own clothes. Hai Ryue didn't say anything. She only felt that her face was very hot. She tightly pressed against Chi-Yu, ignoring the faint smell of blood on his body. Her body trembled again, but this time it wasn't because of the cold. Feeling Hai Ryue's supple body, Chi-Yu clearly felt the blood in his body circulating quickly. It was as if there was a flame burning in his lower abdomen. Perhaps it was because the power of nature was too strong, but the desire that came from the source actually rushed through the meridians in his arms. Although it was still painful, Chi had already forgotten about the pain. Tightly, he hugged that alluring body into his arms. Ryue groaned. She didn't move and still pressed against Chi-Yu's body. Her eyes were already a little blurred. When she was young, she had also fantasized about what her future love would be like. She had also looked forward to her Prince Charming in her life. However, she never thought that her relationship with a man would develop so quickly. But she didn't regret it. The Kirin's aura that emanated from Chi-Yu's body made her feel very comfortable. Under the stimulation of Kirin's aura, the dragon power in her body was gradually recovering. If a man hugged a beautiful woman who was completely naked, then would his hands be obedient when they could move? Anyone could answer this question very quickly, and the answer would be the same. Chi was also a normal man. From the beginning of the hug, in a state of agitation, Chi-Yu's hands began to move. At the beginning, he was only gently caressing the delicate and smooth skin on Ryue's back. However, as the fire in his heart continued to burn, and as the heat on Ryue's skin continued to increase, Chi-Yu's hands began to slide down. The wonderful feeling between her back and buttocks could not help but make him sink into it. Ryue leaned into Chi-Yu's arms. Under the caress of his big hands, her delicate body trembled slightly. Something in her body seemed to have been awakened. Not only was her heart beating faster, but the aura in her body was also constantly changing. Although this place was not a world of ice and snow, the winter in the capital city was very cold. In this barren mountain peak, inside a stone cave, a man and a woman in warm cotton-padded clothes were tightly hugging each other. No matter from which angle one looked at it, it was extremely stimulating for them. Chi-Yu's heart could not calm down, but how could Hai Ryue be calm? Kirin's aura and that of a dragon's quickly fluctuated in this warm environment. Just like when Chi-Yu and Ming Ming's aura communicated, their auras also began to communicate. Every time Chi-Yu caressed Ryue's body, Hai Ryue could clearly feel a wave of heat from his hands and her body. Chi could also feel the same. Hai Ryue's skin constantly emitted a wave of cool aura. The meridians in his body were rapidly recovering, and Ryue's injuries were gradually recovering. Both of their thundercloud force were rapidly recovering. Ryue's injuries were light, and although her dragon's physique was not as strong as Kirin's, there was not much difference. Moreover, Chi-Yu had Kirin's marrow and muscle washing and tendon changing skill triggered by the water thundercloud force. As the water thundercloud force continued to increase, his recovery speed was not slow. The two of them hugged each other tightly. As Chi-Yu's caress became more and more bold, Ryue's hands gradually moved gently behind his back. The touch of her somewhat cold little hands made Chi-Yu's heart sway. His hands constantly moved back and forth on Ryue's back. As his body gradually recovered, His lower body gradually raised up and tightly pressed against Ryue's smooth and flat belly, exuding a fiery aura. Ryue, can you stop touching me? You scoundrel, Ming Ming. It's you who keeps touching me. I can't help it anymore. I'm afraid I'll do it on the spot. Can you do it now? You're injured so badly, yet you still have bad thoughts. Men can't say no. Who says I can't? If it wasn't for Grandmaster saying that I can't casually have relations with women. I want you now. Don't look at you as a powerful Tyrannosaurus Rex. Now that you're in my arms, you can't run away. Ryue smiled foolishly and said, Fool, you didn't completely understand Grandmaster's words. What he meant was for you to control your desire. Don't go too far. Moreover, don't forget, I'm a dragon, your Tyrannosaurus Rex. Among all the Zodiac Guardian warriors, I'm the only one whose body can compare to yours. Do you think I'll be afraid of you? However, don't be a wax spearhead that looks like silver. You look good, but you're useless. Their bodies were no longer ice cold, and they were wrapped in warm cotton clothes. Both of them were emitting a faint heat. Whether it was Chi-Yu or Ryue, both of them were somewhat unable to control their emotions. It was you who seduced me. Chi-Yu is already unable to bear it any longer. If not for his body needing time to recover, how could he hug such a beauty and touch her for an hour? Chi-Yu was aroused. How could Ryue not be the same? Both of their breaths became somewhat hurried. Chi-Yu's hands gently lifted Ryue up in front of him, looking at her perfect and blushing face. Lowering his head, he deeply kissed her. Their lips met. Although Ryue was not very experienced, she seemed to be much more passionate than Chi-Yu. Turning over, she was already lying on top of Chi-Yu's body, her slender legs wrapped around Chi-Yu's. Chi-Yu only smelled a fragrant fragrance in his nose. He had long forgotten that he needed for confidence before he could sleep with them. With one hand grabbing Ryue's plump buttocks, the other hand had already displayed the secret skill of grabbing breasts, accurately grasping the fullness of Ryue's bosom. In his subconscious, he had long desired for this moment to come. At this moment, a normal man and a normal woman, there was nothing that could stop them from continuing to develop. In the stone cave, the feeling of spring was unstoppable. In an instant, a blazing inferno erupted. However, this time, the raging inferno came from lust. Just as the sword was about to touch the shoes, Ryue suddenly pushed Chi-Yu. Looking at him with seductive eyes, a trace of a naughty smile appeared on her pretty face. Are we still using a broom to clean a broken pot now? Chi-Yu chuckled and fiercely hugged Ryue's delicate body. Of course not. Now it should be a dragon's cave with a Qilin spear. Without waiting for Ryue to moan, the small electric motor's horsepower was fully activated. The heat and heat had already carried out the most intimate contact. Both of them let out a low snort at the same time. The dragon Qi and Kirin Qi perfectly combined. The three colors of black, silver, and white formed a natural barrier that isolated the stone cave from the outside world. The spring breeze had already passed through the Jade Gate. After an unknown amount of time, the energy shrouding the stone cave became denser and denser. First, a white light rushed out of the stone cave. The light gradually condensed into the shape of a dragon. Then, a black and silver light twined out. The light did not condense into a shape first. Instead, it enveloped the white dragon-shaped light. An impassioned dragon roar rose along with a deep roar. The two light figures became more and more intense. Gradually, the white light figure was obviously suppressed by the black and silver light figures. The black and silver light figures condensed into the shape of Kirin. His front claws hugged the white dragon's neck, hugging the white dragon in his arms. The rising energy caused the two light figures to become more and more distinct. Even the scales could be seen. It was as if they were real. An impassioned dragon roar came from the stone cave, causing the white dragon light figure outside to tremble. The dragon's body wrapped around Kirin's body. For dragon, claws hugged Kirin. The huge pair of dragon wings on its back also rested on Kirin's back. It seemed to be a little tired. Kirin raised his head to the sky. The huge Kirin's eyes revealed a proud light. Not long after, another impassioned dragon roar came from the stone cave. The white dragon that was attached to Kirin's body seemed to emit a faint red light. The dragon's eyes revealed a hint of panic. The sun gradually slid down from the west. When the dragon roar came from the stone cave for the 5th time, it sounded a little weak. The two light figures outside the stone cave had also changed. Kirin lay on the ground. The white dragon docilely coiled around him. The dragon's eyes were full of gentleness. Kirin lowered his head and used the black and silver horns on his head to gently touch the white dragon's horns. They intimately snuggled together. At the same time, when the 5th dragon roar was heard, a deep roar shook the surroundings. It was loud and deep, and the tricolored light shield that shrouded the cave was broken in an instant. Then, two naked figures rushed out of the cave in the blink of an eye. Kirin and the dragon, who were originally outside the stone cave, floated up and merged with the two figures. Chiyu hugged Hai Ryue, whose face was flushed red. He lovingly caressed her hair that was already drenched in sweat. The Kirin pattern on his body became very clear. As the light and shadow flickered, it emitted a strong light every time. The four-colored auspicious cloud behind him flickered. Every time it flickered, it made his body even more majestic. "Ryue, are you all right?" Chiyu asked softly. Ryue bit Chiyu's shoulder. She did not even open her eyes. She murmured, "I'm so tired. I'm going to sleep." "Chiyu, my dragon power has recovered. However, I don't know why, but I can't use any strength in my body." Chiyu's eyes shone like stars. He chuckled and said, "I didn't expect me to be so strong. I actually brought you 5 orgasms. Now I understand why Master said that I shouldn't touch women so easily. Once I start, I can't control the desire in my heart. Fortunately, your body can withstand it. Otherwise, I would have really hurt you. After this, your dragon aura and my Qilin aura have completely fused. During this afternoon's recovery, I used the Qilin's marrow washing and muscle tendon changing technique to heal our injuries. Rest for a while. I'll carry you and fly back." "No, I don't want to go back. How can I face people like this? Ming Ming will also go to the villa tonight. If she sees us..." Chiyu sighed softly and said, "She will find out sooner or later. It's all my fault. I'll let Ming Ming do whatever she wants with me." A faint blue light diffused out, forming a water-like whirlpool that enveloped the two of them. Then, a red light flashed around the blue light. The faint light of the fire set off the shadow of the water inside, and the temperature of the water gradually rose under the effect of the fire. A soft snort came from the water shadow. "Annoying. Do you think it's washing clothes?" "It's a whirlpool style. Hee, it's faster this way." 20 minutes later, Chiyu, who had changed into clean clothes, hugged Hai Ryue and stood beside the stone cave where they had been entangled. Hai Ryue still looked very tired. She leaned on Chiyu's shoulder and relied on Chiyu's arm around her waist to support her body. "Ryue, why don't we rest here for a night before going back?" Chiyu said with concern. Hai Ryue shook her head and said, "No, let's go back. If we don't return for a night, everyone will be worried. I'm already a little better now. With the dragon force, I'm not as tired as before. However, it's a little difficult for me to walk now." Chiyu laughed strangely. "It's all my fault. Then I'll carry you and fly back. I'll directly send you back to your room." Light flashed. Chiyu carried Hai Ryue's delicate body and soared into the sky. His thundercloud force had completely recovered. He didn't know why, but when he flew with Ryue, his fear of heights decreased a lot. He made an exception and quickly flew about 100 meters in the air. As the sky was already dark, his protective energy turned from silver to black to protect his body. When the two returned to Dragonfield Courtyard, it was already past 8 at night. Chiyu first quietly sent Hai Ryue, who had difficulty walking, into the room through the window. Then he swaggered in from the front door. He was now both physically and mentally refreshed. He was indescribably excited. Ryue had given her first time to him. His first time was given to a stunning beauty like Ryu, no matter which angle he looked at it from. It was enough to make him proud. Thinking of Ryue's alluring body in the stone cave, His heart was indescribably excited. Oh, so many people. As soon as Chi Yu entered, he was surprised to find many people in the hall. Other than Ming Ming, who was not there, Vol, Modi, Su Dong, Master Zagru, and the tall and burly Jita were all there. When Yin Xiaoi saw Chi Yu, he couldn't help but leap forward and pinch Chi Yu's face. Boss, you really came back alive. I thought you would be raped and killed by Ruyue. Then raped and killed. F***CK. Why are you touching me? I'm not interested in you. Ruyue is so gentle. Why would she use force on me? Chi Yu slapped little Yi's hand away, walked to the sofa, and sat down, pleased with himself. Su Dong looked at him and hurriedly asked, Chi Yu, where is Ruyue? You didn't do anything to her, did you? Although he knew that Hai Ruyue was strong, Chi Yu's display of strength at Tianxiang Mountain's Gue Jianshou had also shocked everyone. He had a variety of attacking methods, and he was the most likely to defeat Ruyue. Su Dong knew that Chi Yu had always been dissatisfied with Hai Ruyue, and was afraid that he would be impulsive and do something wrong. Chi Yu pretended to be surprised and said, Ruyue? Didn't Ruyue come back a long time ago? She should be in her room. Su Dong frowned and said, Nonsense. We were in the hall the whole time and didn't see her come back at all. Chi Yu, what happened between you and Ruyue? If you did something wrong, it's not too late to make up for it now. We are all Zodiac Guardian God warriors and are close companions. Although Ruyue's temper is a little bad, she has always been concerned about you. Don't. Chi Yu interrupted Su Dong's words and said, Who do you think I am? Of course I know that Ruyue is good to me, but she has indeed come back. Look, isn't she coming down? Everyone's eyes looked towards the staircase and saw that Hai Ruyue had appeared on the second floor. At this moment, she was wearing a casual denim skirt, and her usual coldness was gone. Her long hair was tied up on top of her head, and she looked a little lazy. Her dragon eyes were gentle like water as she looked at Chi Yu and said to everyone, I have indeed come back a long time ago. There is nothing between me and Chi Yu. I have made everyone worry. Everyone stared dumbfoundedly at Hai Ruden. They turned their heads almost at the same time, their gazes landing on Chi Yu. Chi Yu chuckled and said, Why are you all looking at me? Ruyue, we have worked all day and you must be tired. Go back and rest first. Ruyue nodded meekly and smiled at Chi Yu. She stepped on one foot and floated up the stairs. Because she jumped up with her dragon power, no one present could see that there was something wrong with her body. However, Ryue's gentle smile at the end had made them all stunned. Who would have thought that the Tyrannosaurus Rex, who had always been cold as ice, would become so gentle? Boss, what did you do to Sister Ruyue? Why is she like a different person? Little E said with a stutter. Chi Yu said proudly, Heaven's secrets cannot be revealed. Oh, by the way, where is Ming Ming? Didn't she say she would come tonight? Jita, who had been silent all this while, coughed and said, Master, Ming Ming has returned home. I specially rushed over to tell everyone something. I didn't say anything before you came back. Looking at Jita's somewhat unnatural expression, Chi Yu's heart sank, and he hurriedly asked, What's wrong? Did something happen? Jita nodded and said, Someone from Greece is here. What? Chi Yu suddenly stood up and looked at Jita with a burning gaze. Didn't you tell me last time that Ming Ming's engagement was for 2 years? Su Dong said in surprise. Engagement? Boss, when did Ming Ming have an engagement? Then you and her? Jita smiled bitterly and said, Everyone listen to me. Then he briefly told everyone about Ming Ming's engagement and looked at everyone's ugly expression. He continued, Originally, the engagement should have been completed when Ming Ming was 20 years old. However, the son of the Greek president happened to come to our country. He specially came to see Ming Ming. So, Ming Ming was called back by my old man. Master, I'm here to tell you that it's better for you to let go of it before you and Ming Ming get to a deeper stage. For the sake of the country, and for your own good. For the sake of the country, Ming Ming should not be allowed to marry far away. How old was Ming Ming when she agreed to the engagement? Did she have the ability to make her own decisions at that time? Chi Yu roared angrily. If it's for the sake of the country, then, as the guardian of the Zodiac, Ming Ming is an indispensable expert of our Guardian of the East. How can we let her marry to Greece? What's more, even if we don't consider this, as long as she is with me, no one can take my Ming Ming away. As he spoke, Chiyu pulled Jita up from his seat. Jita was such a big man, but he seemed to be weightless in his hand. Let's go. Take me to your house. I'll go to your old man and make it clear. Jita could clearly feel an abnormally strong pressure from Chiyu's body, causing him to be unable to breathe. Master, don't be rash. That Greek boy just came to see Ming Ming. You can't see her either, Chiyu said overbearingly. Yes, you can't see her either. Boss, I support you. Ming Ming is a part of our Zodiac guardian. How can we let the Westerners take her away? Yin Xiaoi said indignantly. Su Dong, Vol, and Modi all expressed their support for Chiyu. With a smile, Master Zagru, who had been silent all this while, came to Chiyu's side. He gently caressed with his right hand. Chiyu only felt a shock in his hand, and Jida had been taken away from his palm by a gentle force. Chiyu, as the saying goes, concern leads to confusion. What you just said is right. From the perspective of the country, we can't let Ming Ming marry to Greece. What you need to do now is not to angrily go to Ming Ming's father and make it clear. In this situation, it's better to use your brain. Chiyu took a deep breath. He wasn't really angry, but he was very uneasy. The thought of losing Ming Ming made it difficult for him to calm down. Master, tell me, what should I do now? Zagru pondered for a moment and said, If I'm not wrong, since that person is the son of the Greek president, then he can't come to our Yin Huang Republic alone. Perhaps the Western Guardian came with him. Instead of using other methods to make Ming Ming stay, you might as well challenge him as a love rival. Challenge? Chiyu's eyes lit up. He wasn't even afraid of Hai Ruyue. Why would he be afraid of Greek? Zagru nodded and said, Yes, it's a challenge. Westerners attach great importance to dignity. In ancient times, when two men fell in love with a woman, a duel was the final solution. Although it's a modern society now, since he's the son of the president, he won't back down if you challenge him. However, the content of the challenge doesn't have to be force. You have to be mentally prepared. This matter not only concerns the future of Ming Ming, but also whether the Eastern Guardian can establish its prestige in the West. Remember, no matter what you do, you have to use your brain first. If there's any problem that you can't solve, come to me. Chiyu took a deep breath and said, All right, Master. I'll listen to you. Zagru smiled and said, Don't worry. Ming Ming's heart is with you. What else do you have to be afraid of? You're tired today, go upstairs and rest. Riyue is also very tired today. You better take care of her. With your Kirin's aura, it will be very good for her body. His words were vague, but Chiyu immediately understood what he meant. He gently nodded and said, All right, then I'll go up first. I was too impulsive just now. Don't mind it. Help me to protect Ming Ming when you go back. You must not let that kid from Greece touch Ming Ming. Jita laughed and said, Master, I now find that you really have the potential to be my brother-in-law. It seems that you're serious about Ming Ming. Don't worry, Ming Ming is not weak. Moreover, that kid from Greece is polite. He should have arrived in the capital, but I don't know where he lives. Today, Father called Ming Ming back. There should be something to discuss. I think Father thinks the same as you in some aspects. He also can't bear to let Ming Ming get married. Not to mention that Ming Ming is the Easter Guardian. Well, I'll go back first. Tomorrow, I'll try to find some information and call you. After Jita left, Chi-Yu's eyes flashed. He lowered his head and thought about something. Vol said, Boss, I'll go back first. Teacher Modi, shall we go together? Modi looked at Vol and nodded. The two left Dragon Field courtyard together. From the way Vol looked at Modi, one could still see the strong attachment in his eyes, but Modi seemed to be unaware of it. Little said, Boss, don't worry. We'll cross the bridge when we get there. Chiyu shook his head and said, I'm not worried. However, I'm thinking why so many Westerners have come to our Yin Huang Republic recently. First, it was the Dark Parliament, then the Vatican, and now even people from Greece have come. Could it be that there is something in our Yin Huang Republic that attracts them here? If that's the case, then what is it that attracts them? Zagru said approvingly. Good. Chiyu, you're becoming more and more like the real king of the Zodiac. Your worries are similar to what I'm thinking. Last night, I did some careful calculations, but the results are very vague. It seems that some treasure is about to appear in our east. As for what it is, I can't say for sure. Chiyu's eyes moved, and he said, could it be the result of Brother Guanping's research? If his research falls into the hands of evil people, it will indeed cause great trouble. That's not right. If it's just for his research, then why would the righteous Vatican also send people here? I don't think the Dark Parliament, the Vatican, and the Greeks are so simple to come to Yanwan. Su Dong said, it's useless for us to think too much about it now. If they have a motive, then their foxtails will be revealed sooner or later. Chiyu, you should focus on Ming Ming's matter for now. Later, we'll use the information network of the 4 big families to see if there are any abnormalities in the country. Chapter 68. Su Dong smiled and said, Boss, if there's anything you need me to do, just let me know. Chiyu nodded and said, Brother Su, you should rest early too. I've made you worry today. The problem between me and Ruyue has been completely resolved. Don't worry. Great Master, I think I can handle this matter. Zagru smiled and said, Ba. Chiyu, when you can't calm down, focus on the Sarira bead. It will help you calm down and bring you more wisdom. Chiyu naturally wouldn't return to his room. He quietly went upstairs and went directly to Ryue's bedroom. As if she had already expected him to come, Ryue's door was not closed. Chiyu directly pushed the door open and entered, then locked the door. Ryue wasn't asleep. She was leaning on the pillow on the bed and reading a book. When she saw Chiyu walking over, she put the book aside and said, Did something happen to Ming Ming? I vaguely heard your conversation just now. Chiyu sighed and told her everything that happened downstairs. After listening to him, Ryue smiled and said, I believe you have the ability to protect Ming Ming. Do whatever you want to do. We, the Guardian of the East, can't be bullied by the Westerners. Chiyu embraced Ryue and felt the softness of her delicate body. He said softly, Today I got a lover. I was very happy, but I didn't expect to lose another one. Ryue, I will solve this matter. Ryue leaned against Chiyu's chest and said softly, All right, don't think too much. Rest early. Your injuries have just recovered, so it's better for you to rest more. Today, you can stay here with me. Listening to her soft words, Chiyu's worry was dispelled. He smiled and grabbed Ryue's plump chest and said, Even if you chase me away, I won't leave. Ryue's delicate body trembled slightly, and she said somewhat pleadingly, Don't. I can't afford it. Chiyu gently held her soft little hand and said, Why would I? I can't bear to. You sleep first. I have to make a phone call. Perhaps this person can help me find a place where the Greek is staying. Just now, downstairs, Chiyu had thought of a way to find the Greek president's son, but he just didn't say it in front of everyone. The Chilan pearl on his chest flashed, and a black token appeared in his hand. Chiyu picked up the phone in Ryue's room. He dialed a number. A low and hoarse voice came from the other side of the microphone. That person. The 2 simple words sounded a little cold. Chiyu replied, Hello. I wonder if you still remember that person from last night. On the other side of the phone, Higgins' voice rose a few octaves. Ah, the benefactor is you. I didn't expect to receive your call so soon. Chiyu smiled bitterly and said, I didn't expect to contact you, but I have something that I need your help with. The person he was calling was Meng Bei from the Sacred Flame sect, whom he had met in the warehouse last night. Looking for someone. The underworld was obviously more useful than the legal way, even if the police can't find it. However, it was very likely that the underworld would be able to find him easily. Therefore, Chiyu thought of Meng Bei. Although he did not want to deal with the underworld, he could not care less for Ming Ming. Tell me, as long as it's within my capabilities. Meng Bei was surprisingly straightforward. Chiyu, help me find someone. Maybe he's not the only one. He's for Greece and should have just arrived in the capital 2 days ago. He's very young, around 20 years old. He should be quite handsome. That's all I know. If it's possible, I hope you can give me an answer tonight. If you can't find him, then forget it. Meng Bei thought about it and replied immediately, No problem. As long as this person exists, I think I can give you a satisfactory answer. Give me 2 hours. The phone was hung up. Meng Bei's efficiency made Chiyu feel very comfortable. Ryue did not ask. When Chiyu hung up, he realized that she had fallen asleep. The super battle this afternoon had really exhausted her. Chiyu thought of what Zagru said. He gently stroked Ryue's soft long hair with one hand and held her hand with the other. He slowly transferred his water thundercloud force into her body, combining it with her own dragon energy and slowly circulating it. With the nourishment of the water thundercloud force, Ryue let out a low moan in her sleep. Her body moved closer to Chiyu. Her delicate face revealed a bit of dependence, and she did not look as cold as before. Chiyu unconsciously felt pity for her. He lowered his head and kissed her forehead gently. He closed his eyes and started to practice his Qilin Ascension technique. Because he had to wait for the call, he did not dare to completely immerse himself in practice. He just quietly adjusted his breathing. When Chiyu called Meng Bei, it was about 20:30 in the evening. When it was 22 o'clock, the phone in Ryue's room rang. Chiyu immediately woke up from his practice and grabbed the phone. "Hello, Benefactor, is that you?" Meng Bei's voice came from the other side. "Don't call me Benefactor. It sounds awkward. My surname is Qi. You can call me Mr. Qi." After all, the other party was from the underworld. Qi did not say his full name. "Well, Qi, we have found the person you're looking for. Within 3 days, there are a total of 3 flights from Greece to the capital. There are a total of 7 young people in their 20s who fit your description, but only one is handsome. I think he should be your target." However, to my surprise, after this person arrived in the capital, he used the name of the Yinhuang Republic of my dream, Lin Yifan. I think he should be very interested in the culture of Yinhuang. Chiyu nodded secretly. The Sacred Flame Gang was really powerful. No wonder they could do arms business. It was very rare to get such detailed information in just 1.5 hours. "Where does this person live now? Do you have an accurate address?" "Yes. He lives in the Capital Hilton Hotel, room number 67 to 84. He came to the capital with 2 women. According to my investigation, the 2 women are very beautiful, but they don't look like his lovers. That's all I have found. Mr. Qi, do you need any more help?" Chiyu said with a smile. "No. Brother Meng, thank you. I will treat you to dinner if there is chance." "There is no need for dinner, Mr. Qi. I have a presumptuous request. After we went back to report yesterday, our boss heard that you saved our brothers and was very grateful. He wants to find a chance to treat Mr. Qi, hoping to make friends with you. I wonder if you could do me the honor?" Chiyu frowned slightly. He really didn't want to have anything to do with the underworld, but he had just helped him, so he couldn't refuse. So he reluctantly said, "Okay, pick a time. I also want to know what kind of person the boss of the Sacred Flame Gang is." Meng Bei said, "Tomorrow then. Tomorrow at 12, noon at number 167, Shidan. See you at Tianming Hotel. Just tell them your surname is Qi when you arrive there." Chiyu said with a smile, "Is the Sacred Flame Gang always so efficient? Okay, I will be there at noon tomorrow. Then I won't bother you anymore. Goodbye, Mr. Qi. Call me directly if you need anything." Meng Bei hung up the phone. Chiyu thought for a while. Why did the boss of the Sacred Flame Gang want to see him? He must be interested in his special strength. It didn't matter. Anyway, he had nothing to lose. It was not a big deal for him to have a meal. However, the power of the Sacred Flame Gang was really not to be underestimated. It was so easy to investigate a person in the capital. It showed how powerful their underground force was. The Hilton Hotel? Then I'll go there now. Chiyu was not impatient, but he had to be cautious when it came to Ming Ming. The sooner he got the news about Lin Yifan, the son of the Greek president, the better it would be for him. Thinking of this, he carefully covered Ryue with a quilt. Under the effect of Kirin's thundercloud force, Ryue had slept very soundly. Taking a deep breath, Chiyu quietly took off his clothes and put them into the Kirin pearl. Then he opened the window and jumped out like lightning into the vast night. Zagru looked out of the window in the room and sighed. Maybe this is fate. Chiyu, you have met your nemesis after all. This is also the most difficult obstacle in your life. Let nature take its course. Unfortunately, it is difficult for him and his nemesis to bury the hatchet like he did with Ryue. Otherwise, everything will be perfect. Chiyu naturally did not know what had happened to Zagru. As soon as he jumped out of the villa, he immediately used his original alienation. With the help of the abundant thundercloud force, he flew into the city at a height of about 50 meters from the ground. After all, he had lived in the capital for nearly 20 years. He knew where the Hilton Hotel was. With the abundant thundercloud force, Chi-Yu flew very fast. It did not take long for him to arrive at his destination. At this time, it was about 22:30. For ordinary people, this time might be the time to rest, but for those who had a rich nightlife, it was just the beginning. The Hilton Hotel was brightly lit. It was a super hotel chain in the world. All the facilities looked very complete. The doorman was polite at the door to welcome the guests. Most of the guests were well-dressed, and it was obvious that they were people of the upper class. Chi put on his clothes in a dark corner and strode toward the door of the hotel. He naturally knew when to dress up. It just so happened that the new clothes that Ryua bought for him the other day were kept in the Kirin bead. After putting on the simple clothes, he, who was more than 9 meters tall, immediately transformed. The Kirin bloodline gave him a noble temperament. Coupled with the expensive suit, he walked directly into the lobby of the Hilton Hotel without any obstacles. Chi had already made up his mind on the way here. He decided to find out the specific location of room number 684 first, and then find a way to fly to the window from the outside to investigate. Therefore, he had to go to the Hilton Hotel first. Chi walked to the front desk and said to a beautiful attendant, "Hello, how do I get to room number 684? The attendant looked up at Chi. The naughty smile on his face and the attractiveness of the famous brand suit immediately made the attendant's eyes light up. She smiled and said, "Room number 684, please take the elevator to the 6th floor, turn left, and you will see the sign." Chi nodded and smiled. He turned and walked in the direction of the elevator. Looking at his back as he left, the attendant was a little surprised and said to herself, "Room number 784 on the 6th floor seems to be a presidential suite. This person must be very rich." As she said, her eyes were already shining. Chi did not know that he had been regarded as a rich person. He took the elevator and went directly to the 6th floor. He turned left according to the attendant's instructions and walked straight inside. Sure enough, there was a sign that showed that room number 684 was inside. As Chi walked inside, he vigilantly spread out his spiritual power to feel everything around him. As the saying goes, it is better to be safe than sorry. He would not be the slightest bit careless. As he walked, he looked at the door numbers on both sides. He gradually found that the room number 684 that he was looking for seemed to be at the end of the corridor. This discovery made him immediately speed up his pace and walk inside. At this moment, he suddenly saw a door at the end of the corridor open, and a person came out. When he saw someone, he subconsciously stopped moving forward. Then, his gaze immediately became a little frozen. It was a woman who looked about 20 years old. She was tall and about 5 meters tall. She looked a little thin, but the curve of her chest was harmonious enough. Her slender waist gave people a soul-stirring feeling, and under her waist was a round buttocks line. More than 2/3 of her pair of big slender feet were exposed outside her short skirt. She wore a red singlet and a naughty shawl on her back. Chi really wanted to ask her, "Aren't you cold?" One must know that it was winter now. But looking at her appearance, she didn't even have stockings on her feet. She was actually wearing a pair of high-heel shoes. Her slender toes were the same as her fingers, painted with red nail polish. From that angle, it was full of temptation. What caught Chi-Yu's attention the most was this woman's eyes. It was definitely a pair of peach blossom eyes. Her eyes were actually light red. This was also the most beautiful peach blossom eyes that Chi-Yu had ever seen. As her eyes moved, even if she didn't look at Chi-Yu, she still had a strong attraction. Long eyelashes, a tall nose, and dark red long hair that grew on her head were casually tied up. There was a faint smile on the corner of her mouth. After she went out, she directly walked outside. This was the third beauty that Chi-Yu had seen that was close to the perfect level. The first was Hai Ryue, who had just become his woman today. The second was Wen-Ting. The two of them were far from the perfect level. They were gentle and gorgeous, respectively. Today, Ryue had become gentle and was one step closer to the perfect level. and this beauty in front of him was obviously of European descent. Compared to her, the leopard girl was a little less enchanting. In terms of gorgeous, she was also a little inferior. Only her figure was a little stronger than her. The woman's legs were very long. In the process of Chi-Yu sizing her up, she had already arrived in front of Chi-Yu. She obviously noticed that Chi-Yu was watching her. Her gaze turned, and she smiled at Chi-Yu. When Chi-Yu's gaze met hers, he didn't know why, but his whole body suddenly turned cold, as if he had been stung by something. Although the woman in front of him was smiling, Chi-Yu felt a strong evil from her. Passing by, Chi-Yu subconsciously stopped in his tracks. Who was this woman? Why did she give him such a feeling? It was obvious that she should also be an ability user, but at this moment, he couldn't clearly feel what level her ability had reached. This was enough to show that she had the strength to threaten him. Ah, right? Didn't Ming Bei say that there were 2 other women with that Lin fan? Then, this should be one of them. She should be the Western Guardian. Thinking of this, Chi-Yu's brain worked quickly. He thought to himself, Ryue once told him that the Greek Guardian would inherit the ability of a Greek god in each generation and protect Greece with his guardian. Then, could this woman just now be this generation's god? Then, which god was she? Chi didn't know much about Greek mythology, but he really couldn't think of any god with such a strong charm. If this kind of appearance and personality could still be a god, then Greek mythology was a bit ridiculous. The footsteps behind him gradually disappeared. Chi looked back at the empty corridor and continued to walk inside. Soon, he came to the end of the corridor and found his target. He found that the Western beauty lived in rooms 6, 7, 8, 5, just next to rooms 6, 7, 8, 4. This confirmed the speculation in his heart. With a faint smile, Chi-Yu's eyes revealed a faint glimmer of light. He glanced at room 6, 7, 4, and remembered its approximate location. Then, he turned and walked to the elevator. Pressing the button, Chi-Yu waited for the elevator while thinking about how to peep at rooms 6, 7, 4 from the outside. A soft ding sounded. The elevator arrived, and the door opened. At the moment when the elevator door opened, his eyes froze. 2 women walked out of the elevator. One of them was the one he saw in the corridor just now. At this time, she was holding the other woman's arm and whispering something. If the woman with long dark red hair was already very stunning to Chi-Yu, then when the woman next to her appeared, her light was completely overshadowed. This place omitted the 200 words to describe the beauty. The general idea was that this woman was even more beautiful than the beauty just now. Perfect, this was absolutely perfect. The Western beauty in front of Chi-Yu couldn't find a single flaw at all. He never thought that a woman could be so perfect. He was completely stunned, and his heart stopped beating at this moment. The 2 women naturally saw Chi-Yu standing in front of the elevator. The woman with long dark red hair laughed and whispered to the perfect woman in Yanhuang language, "Another fool. Miss, your charm is really great." The purple-haired woman didn't say anything. She just smiled and walked out of the elevator with the red-haired woman. They passed by Chi-Yu and walked along the corridor. When their figures completely disappeared, Chi-Yu gradually woke up from the sluggishness. Here omitted the 100 words about the woman's beauty. Walking into the elevator, Chi-Yu's heart beat again, but at a much faster rate than usual. He frowned slightly. If these 2 women came to the capital with that Lin fan, then he was afraid that he would be in big trouble. Although the red-haired woman, Chi-Yu, was not clear about her strength, he still had 60% confidence that he wouldn't be at a disadvantage. However, the purple-haired woman was like a clear but bottomless pool, like a boundless starry sky, completely unfathomable to him. Chi didn't know how he walked out of the restaurant. Standing dozens of meters in front of the restaurant, he took out a cigarette from his pocket and lit it. As he smoked, he deeply felt the shock in his heart for a long time. After taking a few deep breaths, he threw the cigarette on the ground and stepped on it to extinguish it. Seeing that there was no one around, he flashed and arrived at a dark corner. Under the guidance of his spiritual power, Kirin floated out of the Kirin orb and covered Chi-Yu's body. Under the activation of the thundercloud force, his tall body disappeared into thin air. It was invisibility. Floating up, Chi-Yu didn't use his origin dissimulation. Instead, he operated the 4-attribute thundercloud force at full force and used Kieran's aura concealment ability. At this moment, he was like the wind without any aura. Under the effect of the thundercloud force, he floated up and used the windowsill of the outer wall of the hotel to climb up to the 6th floor carefully. When he arrived at the 6th floor, Chiyu used the thundercloud force to stick his body to the wall. The position he chose was near rooms 6, 7, and 4. He stuck his ear to the wall and released all his senses. He used his spiritual power to drive his hearing to listen to the movements around him. The first thing Chiyu heard was a violent panting and moaning. He cursed in his heart. It's just nighttime, and they're already working. It must be a wolf living here. Shifting his hearing, he probed the room next door. Finally, he heard the voice he wanted to hear. Yifun, go to bed early tonight. After you see that girl tomorrow, we want to accompany you to deal with business matters. The one who spoke was the red-haired woman. Chiyu had heard her voice just now and immediately recognized her. His hearing quickly locked onto the room and focused on listening. He heard a pleasant male voice say, "Sister Sorosuo, when are you going back to Greece?" The red-haired woman said softly, "I don't know. Let's see how things go. Yifun, there are some things you should know. You don't have to ask too much. This is my first time coming to Yanwang. It feels pretty good here. There's indeed a hint of classical culture. However, I don't know much about it. I don't know how the culture here compares to Greece." Lin Yifan said, "This is my 3rd time coming to the Yanhuang Republic. In terms of culture, I'm afraid even Greece is lacking. Miss, why did you request us to use the name of the Yanhuang Republic after we arrived in Yanhuang and speak in their language?" A pleasant voice sounded. "There's a saying in Yanhuang, when in Rome, do as the Romans do. If you want to experience the culture of a place, you have to first assimilate into the place. Yifun, there are many things worth learning in Yanhuang. You have to pay attention. The president's decision is wise. A marriage alliance with Yanhuang is a good choice." Lin Yifan said, "That's right. I've always been interested in the culture of the East. I still remember that year when I saw that girl called Ming Ming. Her big, moving eyes and the unique aura of an Eastern woman really intoxicated me." Suwa giggled. "You little pervert. Tomorrow, I want to see what's so beautiful about that girl that she's worth your attention. However, I think no matter how beautiful she is, she can't compare to Mississippi." Lin Yifan said respectfully, "Of course. In this world, no one can compare to Mississippi, Miss is." The pleasant voice sounded again. "Yifun. Sorry, miss. I spoke too much," Lin Yifan said with some trepidation. "This time, I'll have to trouble Miss and Sister Saw to accompany me to Yanhuang. It's Yifun's honor." Suwa said, "Yifun, you can't think that way. Miss, and I didn't come to Yanhuang for you. If not for that old Pope of the Vatican discovering Yanhuang through astrology." At this point, the pleasant voice suddenly whispered, "There's someone." Chiyu could clearly feel a mountainous battle intent pressing down on him through the wall. The huge battle intent clawed at his body in a frenzy. His instinct screamed, and he did a somersault without hesitation. Just as his body left the wall, a red light shot out from the wall, brushing past Chiyu's scalp. At this time, Chiyu could no longer be bothered with stealth. With the help of the thundercloud force, he quickly landed on the ground. His body bounced up, and with a leap, he fled into the distance. The sound of wind came from behind him. He knew that someone was chasing him. Based on the aura, he didn't need to look back to know that it was the red-haired girl, Suwa. What Chiyu was most puzzled about now was how the purple-haired girl, the lady called Miss, had discovered him. He was very confident in his breath control technique, and Kieran's hidden itself had the effect of breath control. But how had he still been discovered? He really didn't understand. He wasn't afraid of Saw chasing him, but this was a troublesome area. Although it was late, there were still many people on the streets. Once he moved, it wouldn't be easy to clean up the mess. So he didn't even look back as he rushed forward, his movements as fast as lightning. Suwa chased after Chiyu. Clearly, she had no intention of letting him go. Chiyu specifically looked for small alleys with no people, and he fled as fast as a meteor, but Suwa wasn't slow either. Although she couldn't close the distance between the two of them, she was still hanging on behind Chiyu, making it impossible for him to shake her off. Gradually, the two of them left the downtown area. Chiyu already had a plan in mind as he ran at full speed. When they ran out of the downtown area and came to an empty plain, he suddenly stopped and turned around. With a wave of his right hand, a bolt of purple lightning instantly attacked Suo, who was chasing him from behind. Suo was still dressed like when Chiyu first saw her. Her delicate body turned slightly in the air, and she let out a sweet laugh. 5 red rays of light shot out from the fingers of her right hand. The red rays of light cunningly passed through the lightning in Chiyu's hand from different angles. Chiyu only felt 5 sharp auras coming at him. The thundercloud force instantly strengthened, and he stepped on Kirin's treasure. His body moved a few steps in an instant, and only then did he manage to neutralize the opponent's attack. At this time, although Kirin's treasure had lost its invisibility effect, the large cloaked Kirin's treasure still covered Chiyu's body. Chiyu lowered his head slightly, so Suo couldn't see his face clearly. Suo didn't follow up with the attack. She looked at Chiyu with a teasing gaze. Guardian of the East? Her moan was very seductive. It gave people a bone-deep feeling. If Chiyu didn't have Kirin's aura to protect him, just hearing her voice would probably cause a physiological reaction. Chapter 69. Chiyu cursed inwardly. His reaction wasn't slow either. He slapped down with his left hand, blocking Soso's kick. At the same time, he raised his right hand to block her hand. 2 clanging sounds rang out. Chiyu's hands were very steady, and Soso was forced back by his absolute energy. But Chiyu was shocked to discover that Soso's kick contained a needle-like energy. Its sharpness was much stronger than Ryue's dragon wing stars. Without his true form mutation, he immediately grunted. The sharp stream of air drilled into his body and pierced his heart along his meridians. Chiyu had been through many battles recently and had a wealth of combat experience. The moment he realized that something was wrong, he immediately urged the 4 elements of thundercloud force to block the needle-like stream of air in his body. Under the attack of the 4 elements of thundercloud force, the needle-like stream of air was just barely neutralized before it reached his heart. Even so, Chiyu couldn't help but break out in a cold sweat. If his opponent's energy was just a little stronger, his heart might really have been pierced. Soso seemed very surprised that Chiyu could block her attack and not die. Her light red eyes still revealed a seductive smile. Handsome, you're so strong. Let's go again, okay? In a different place, on a different occasion, this would definitely be seductive words. But in Chiyu's ears, it wasn't the case at all. Soso was still talking, but her left leg was already quickly raised. Her slender thigh was straight, and even the tip of her foot was straightened in the direction of her leg. Western women's calves were more slender than Eastern women's, and this was undoubtedly reflected on her body, especially when she was wearing a short skirt. As soon as she raised her leg, her breasts were immediately revealed. Chiyu couldn't help but say black. Fortunately, he had lowered his voice. Plus, he was in a somewhat sorry state after dispersing Soso's attack, so his voice was a little hoarse. Soso had no intention of giving him a chance to catch his breath, just as Chiyu saw the black panties at the base of her fair thighs. His leg had already landed, and a red light as thick as a finger suddenly shot out from the tip of his foot, heading straight for Chiyu's chest. Chiyu already knew how powerful she was after hearing her scream earlier. He vaguely sensed that the strongest part of this woman, named Soroso, was her left leg. Chiyu stepped out of the Kirin swim without any worry. His body transformed into illusory figures in the air, dodging the attacks of the red light. The red light pierced through a phantom beside him like a bolt of lightning. Chiyu saw that wherever the red light passed, the air actually slightly distorted. Soso's leg had already landed, and before Chiyu could feel that it was a pity, the alarm in his heart rose, and he quickly moved a few steps. At the same time, his body made a beautiful spin in the air, and the red light that had passed through the illusory figure actually shot back at him. Fortunately, he reacted quickly and barely dodged it. Soso looked at him with a smile. Little fool, it's tracking. Sure enough, The red light had just passed by, but it immediately returned, its target still locked on a Chiyu's body. Feeling the threat of the red light, Chiyu's heart was filled with anger. He no longer dodged. Since you used your strongest attack, then I'll use my strongest to dispel it. Black and silver light condensed on his right arm, and with a flick of his wrist, he punched the dark red light. It was the same sharp energy, but this time it was at least 3 times stronger than the previous one. However, this time, Chiyu used his strongest Kirin arm to block it. Confrontation. With a low shout, black and silver light shot out of his fist. In the battle against the dark red light, Kirin arm clearly had the upper hand. The black and silver light intertwined, dispelling the dark red light arrow. Chi was also forced to take 3 steps back from the strong impact before he could barely stabilize himself. What a strong attack. This was the only thought that came to Chiyu. He was secretly shocked. They were both guardians of the West, but this woman named Soso seemed to be much stronger than Lu Yuan from the Vatican. Soso's bewitching eyes revealed a trace of doubt, and for the first time, she said in surprise, "You are very strong. You can actually dispel my attack. However, since you eavesdropped on our conversation, I can only kill you. Look at that part of mine. Death is not a wish, right?" She still had a playful smile on her face, but instead of advancing, her body retreated. Suddenly, a dazzling red light lit up on her forehead, followed by her shoulders, hands, chest, clothes, and both her eyes. Each red light seemed to represent a special meaning. At this moment, Soso's light red eyes suddenly turned golden. The wind seemed to stop blowing, and everything in the surroundings suddenly became quiet. Chiyu could guess that she was about to launch an all-out attack. However, Chiyu was not a fool. Although he was not afraid of Soso's attack, he did not want to expose all of his abilities. He snorted coldly and used the thundercloud force to affect his voice, making it much more hoarse. "Little slut, I'm not going to play with you anymore. Bye." His figure flashed, and this time, Chiyu pushed the thundercloud force to its peak. At the same time, under Kirin Yin's cover, he quietly completed his true form mutation and soared into the sky. Soso smiled as she watched Chiyu jump up. She thought to herself, "Go ahead and jump. My attack range is very large. The moment you fall down will be the moment you die." However, this time, her judgment was wrong. Chiyu's body did not fall at all. After his true form mutation, the 4-attribute thundercloud force carried his body and floated away. He flew high into the sky and directly flew into the distance. Flying was much faster than rushing on the ground. When Soso realized that something was wrong, she instantly released 9 rays of red light, but it was too late to chase after Chiyu's floating figure. "Bastard!" Soso forcefully stomped the ground. The smile on his face had completely disappeared, replaced by a cold expression. His light red eyes were now filled with malice. He stared in the direction Chiyu had left for a full 3 minutes. Then, he snorted coldly and retreated, disappearing into the darkness. As he flew in the direction of the Dragon Field courtyard, Chiyu pondered in his heart. Just now, they said that the Pope of the Vatican had used astrology to divine something. What was it? What a pity. He had been discovered at that time. Otherwise, he would have been able to figure out the reason why the Western Guardian had come to the East. That woman called Soso was simply a pervert. She had used her body to attract the opponent's attention, then launched a fatal attack. He had never seen such ruthlessness in his life. Moreover, she was extremely powerful. At the very least, she was not weaker than Su Dong. Even if he wanted to defeat her after his true form mutation, he would probably have to go through a lot of trouble. Perhaps she was not very powerful, but her penetrative attack was indeed powerful. She condensed limited energy into a single point, and the resulting attack power was much stronger. What kind of divine ability did this guardian from Greece inherit? When he returned, he had to properly discuss it with Ryue. Only by knowing oneself and the enemy could one emerge victorious. Soso's figure gradually faded from Chiyu's mind. What appeared in front of him was that beautiful face. Since Soso was so powerful, and the Western Guardian addressed her as Miss, then it was possible that she was the leader of the Greek Guardians. If his guess was correct, then the Greek guardian king of this world should have inherited the divinity of a goddess. This time, she had not come for nothing. At least, she had obtained some reliable information. Thinking of this, Chiyu could not help but worry about the meeting between Ming Ming and Lin Yifan the next day. If he challenged Lin Yifan and Lin Yifan invited that purple-haired beauty, would he have the confidence to win? After careful consideration, Chiyu smiled bitterly. He did not have the slightest confidence. That purple-haired beauty gave him a very mysterious feeling. An unknown enemy was always the scariest. When Chiyu returned to the Dragonfield courtyard, it was already late at night. He quietly snuck into Ryue's room, burrowed under the covers, and carefully embraced Ryue. Hugging the beautiful Ryue, Chiyu immediately felt a lot more at ease. Perhaps it was because she was too tired in the afternoon, but Ryue was still sleeping soundly and was not disturbed by Chiyu's return. Ryu seemed to have sensed something as she subconsciously stuck close to Chiyu's body in her dreams. The corner of her mouth revealed a sweet smile. At this moment, she was only wearing a thin layer of silk underwear. It felt like a ball of fire. However, Chiyu did not dare to have any daydreams now. He hugged Ryue and closed his eyes to practice his ascending Qilin method. At the same time, he carefully inserted his water thundercloud force into Ryue's body, continuing to help her dragon chi circulate and restore her vitality. In the early morning, when Ryue woke up from her sleep, she could not help but shyly find herself curled up in Chiyu's arms. Chiyu's eyes were closed, and his body naturally emitted a magnetic-like aura that attracted her. Her body moved slightly. Although her lower body was still a little uncomfortable, it was much better than yesterday. Recalling the spring scenery in the cave, her eyes could not help but become a little blurred. She knew that she would never forget what happened yesterday for the rest of her life. She gently stroked Chi-Yu's solid chest. Although he did not have exaggerated muscles, there was explosive power hidden under his bronze-colored healthy skin. The Kirin bead hanging on his neck was always changing a faint luster. Every time the four kinds of energy aura changed, Ryue could clearly feel the ascending dragon skill thundercloud force fluctuating in her body, which was completely benign. Although there had always been some conflict between him and Chiyu in the past, it was undeniable that ever since Chiyu had appeared, his cultivation speed of the ascending dragon art had become much faster than when he was cultivating alone. Facts had proven that the aura naturally emitted from the Qilin was very beneficial to every Zodiac guardian god. Suddenly, a mischievous big hand appeared on her plump buttocks. Chiyu closed his eyes and said, "Baby, if you misbehave again, I won't be polite." As he said that, a strange smile appeared at the corner of his mouth, causing Ryue's heart to skip a beat. "When did you wake up?" Ryue stopped stroking Chiyu's chest. Although she had experienced the happiest feeling in her life yesterday, the feeling of New Year had indeed come too suddenly. Even though she had inherited the dragon's bloodline, it was difficult for her to endure the Qilin's torrential downpour the next day. Chiyu opened his eyes. Immediately, Ryue felt as if he had changed into a different person. When he opened his eyes, his whole body emitted a radiant light. It was not a strong aura, but it had an extremely strong, penetrating power. "I woke up when a certain someone teased me." Chiyu laughed evilly. The hand that was stroking Ryue's plump buttocks tightened slightly. The bouncy feeling made him let out a long sigh of satisfaction. He hugged a roll in his arms tightly. Ryue did not struggle. She gently pressed her head against Chiyu's chest and said in a low voice, "How was last night's harvest?" Chiyu was stunned. "You knew that I went out?" Ryue smiled and said, "If I didn't even know that you went out, then I wouldn't be a Zodiac dragon warrior. If my body allowed it, I would have gone with you. After that, when you came back, there was a faint fragrance on your body. You must have met a woman. However, can you first tell me who you called before you went out yesterday?" Chiyu did not hide anything from Ryue. He recounted everything that Meng Bei said on the phone yesterday. After listening to Chiyu, Ryue nodded and said, "I have heard of the Sacred Flame sect before. Although the Longyu group does not involve the underworld, I also know that this Sacred Flame sect is very famous. As far as I know, There are two major provincial underworld gangs in the country. One of them is the Sacred Flame sect in the north, and the one in the south is the Sunflower Water sect. The Sacred Flame sect's main source of income is the reselling of firearms. I heard that they even have connections with some terrorist organizations. They have a wide range of furnaces abroad and are extremely powerful. There seem to be two bosses in the Sacred Flame sect, but I don't know who they are. After all, the Sacred Flame sect controls the entire area north of the Yangtze River. They can no longer be said to be the absolute underworld, and they do not have any conflicts with us, so I have not investigated them. Compared to the Sacred Flame sect, the Sunflower Water sect is much more despicable because their main source of income is drugs. I think that as long as it is a normal person, they would have a feeling of disgust towards drugs. Chi nodded and said, "In that case, the Sacred Flame sect is still worth befriending. It just so happens that I will go see what kind of person their boss is at noon. Perhaps I can get some useful information through communication. I think that these underworld gangs have a very large intelligence system. It can be seen from how they were able to help me find Lin Yifan so quickly yesterday. If we can get their help, it will be much more convenient for us to investigate anything in the north in the future." Hai Ryue smiled faintly and nodded her head. As the powerful Zodiac guardian god, she naturally wouldn't put the gangs in her eyes. She said, "All right then, I'll go with you at noon, okay?" Chi Yu was slightly stunned. Hai Ryue, who had always been strong, had actually used an inquiring tone to talk to him. Furthermore, there were hints of coquettishness and pleading in her tone. It seemed that she had indeed changed. No wonder he had often heard that after a woman gave her first time to a man, she would never forget this man for the rest of her life. This feeling was really great. Of course, we will meet the people from the Sacred Flame sect at noon and wait for Jida's notification. When Ming Ming meets that Lin Yifan, I must be beside her. The Greek Guardian is indeed powerful. Last night, I encountered quite a setback. In the end, I had to rely on my true form to transform and fly away to escape from the other party's pursuit. Ryue, help me analyze it and see what kind of god's power this Greek Guardian inherited. It's actually so strange. Immediately, Chi briefly told her everything that had happened at the Seton Hotel last night. When it came to the battle with Soroso, he described it in great detail. He even described how he felt after suffering the other party's attack. After listening to Chi Yu, Hai Ryue fell into deep thought. Chi Yu lowered his head and looked at her rosy face. He could not help but kiss it. The smooth feeling was really intoxicating. Hai Ryue was deep in thought. Suddenly, she felt something hard against her lower abdomen. She subconsciously used her hand to grab the hard object. Suddenly, she felt a heat in her palm. The thing seemed to be alive and gently flicked twice. Chi you. After waking up, Hai Ryue immediately realized that it was a horse's thing. The shyness on her face suddenly spread to her ears. "Don't. We still have a lot of business today. Don't make trouble, okay?" Chi felt really good being held by Hai Ryue. He said with grievance, "You can't blame me for this. Who asked you to be so attractive? It turns out that inheriting Kieran's bloodline is not all good. Forget it. I'll endure it." Ryue looked at his pitiful appearance. She could not help but burst into laughter. She held his hard hand and gently rubbed it twice. "Okay, wait for Ming Ming to come back. Anyway, you have bad intentions for her. I think the two of us should be able to." Hearing this, Chi Yu was immediately overjoyed. This was a threesome. "Good, Ryue. I find that you're getting better and better." No woman was willing to share her husband with someone else. Hai Ryue was naturally not an exception, but she had to accept the fact that her body could not satisfy this guy beside her. Instead of letting him steal, it was better to pull Ming Ming to her side and form a united front. Your head is full of obscene thoughts. Don't make a fuss. I just thought about it, and I have some ideas. According to what you said, even the president's son, Lin Yifan, is so respectful to the purple-haired girl. It seems that the purple-haired girl is the true successor of this world's Greek guardian goddess. And among the Greek goddesses, although there are many strong ones, I'm afraid there is only one who is as strong as the divine servant called Soso. Only she could have such a powerful divine servant, or rather, her protector. Chiyu said curiously, "Okay, Ryua, don't keep me in suspense. What kind of divine servant is it?" Hyrule raised her head and said, "The goddess of war? I'm not familiar with Greek mythology. I probably wouldn't even know the name." Hyrule suddenly laughed and said, "No, maybe you don't know the other Greek mythological characters, but you definitely know this one. Because for young people like us, who hasn't seen the comic books from the Sun Nation when we were young?" Chiyu's eyes lit up and said, "You mean the Saint Seiya that the little Sun Nation drew? Ah, Ryua, you can't be telling me that the purple-haired girl actually inherited." Hyrule nodded firmly and said, "If I'm not wrong, she inherited the goddess of war and wisdom, Athena. The goddess of the hearth Vesta, the goddess of war and wisdom, Athena, and the goddess of the moon and earth are the three major Greek goddesses. Among them, only Athena has the title of the king of gods." Chiyu looked at Hyrule dumbfounded. "What the hell? Athena? It's actually Athena? Then who was the one who fought with me yesterday? Could it be the Gold Saint?" Hyrule said angrily, I told you to go to school, but you refused to learn. There are no Gold Saints in Greece. Those are all made up by the Little Sun Nation. The Saint Seiya comic is just a fictional version of Greek mythology. In the real Greek mythology, the goddess of war and wisdom, Athena, is the sister of the Sun Nation, Apollo. The ones who protect the Sun Nation are the 12 golden crows, and the ones who protect Athena are the rulers of the signs of the Zodiac. They're not saints. In Greek mythology, they're known as the guardians of the constellations. At the same time, they can be said to be the servants of the goddess of war and wisdom. The so-called Saint Seiya that Little Sun Nation mentioned was actually borrowed from the guardians of the constellations. Nowadays, many young people I've met think of the Saint Seiya as the sun, but that's not the case at all. There are no Saint Seiya at all. The guardians of the constellations are a part of Greek culture. They and the goddess Athena are part of the pride of Greece. So, in your understanding of them, never associate them with the Saint Seiya. Otherwise, you'll have the wrong impression." Chiyu suddenly said, "This Little Sun Nation is really not a good thing. Their own country is not cultured, so they will meet people from other countries." Hyrule nodded and said, "Let's not care about the Sun Nation for now. Since we can be sure that the opponent has inherited the abilities of the goddess of war and wisdom, then we must be extra careful in everything we do. In that case, we have to be extra careful in everything we do. Even if Athena's ability hasn't fully awakened, it's not easy to deal with her. Yesterday, and you judging from that so-so in her hand and her abilities, she should be the guardian of the Scorpio constellation." "Scorpio? That so-so looks a little perverted. She does look like a beautiful scorpion with a poisonous tail." Chiyu couldn't help but shiver when he thought of Suo's bewitching eyes. Although Suo might not be stronger than him, Chiyu's heart trembled. Although So-So's abilities might not be stronger than his, her psychological tactics and demeanor during battle were very attractive. He himself was a rogue, so he must not be tempted by her beautiful appearance. Hyrule frowned and said, "A Scorpio is already so powerful. I don't know what abilities Athena has. If it was just the two of them coming to the country, it would be fine. I'm afraid we'll be hard to deal with. No wonder the Zodiac Guardians in this world have so many strong and mutated situations. Even you are much more powerful than the previous Kirin. So our main opponent is actually the goddess of war and command, Athena, and her guardians of the 12 constellations." Chiyu said in a bad mood, "Since they are all virgins, how good would it be if they inherited the goddess of the stove?" Hyrule poked Chiyu's chest with her finger and said, "You wish. How can there be such a good thing in this world? As far as I know, the guardian of Greece is not the god King Zeus, nor is it the sun god Apollo. Instead, it is the two main gods, one righteous and one evil. The one who represents light and controversy is Athena. The one who represents evil and darkness is Hades, the Nether King. Our luck is really too good. After all, from a certain point of view, Athena belongs to the righteous. If we fight with her and her servants, at least we will not encounter any sinister and evil attacks. Chiyu said, Ryue, do you think our 12 Zodiac Guardians are stronger? Or the guardians of the 12 constellations? Ryue sighed softly and said, This world is balanced. Although I do not know who is the strongest, I estimate that if we both cultivate to the highest realm, there should not be much difference in strength. However, I do not know how you will compare with Athena in the future. Ever since you obtained the Guardian, you are almost comparable to me in the second stage of the 6-cloud transformation. I really cannot imagine how strong you will be when you reach the 9-cloud level. I think you should not be any weaker than the goddess of war and command. She nodded and said, I'm not too concerned about these for now. After listening to their conversation last night, the thing that bothers me the most is the purpose of these guardians of the West coming to our Yanhuang land. To be able to attract the guardians of the Church of Darkness, Greece, shows how strong the attraction is. Ryue, you have more information than me. Is there anything suspicious in the country? Ryue shook her head and said, If there is anything suspicious, then the 4 big families will be the first to know. The 4 big family strength is almost spread across the north and south of the country. As long as something big happens, I am afraid it will be difficult to escape their eyes and ears. But until now, besides telling us that there was an ancient giant beast appearing in the South City, they have not brought any other news. Chiyu snorted coldly and said, I think these 4 big families have their own ambitions and are not really subservient to us. It is just that they are not willing to go against us directly and were shocked by our power that day. So they reluctantly agreed to cooperate with us. But what they are really thinking, we still do not know. If those guys from the West are after a priceless treasure, then wouldn't the 4 big families covet this treasure? So they have not reported anything to us, but it does not mean that they do not know anything. It seems that I have to find a chance to go to the Shun family in the capital and see if I can get something out of them. Hai Ryue smiled slightly and said, Chiyu, you are becoming more and more like a leader now. Your analysis is very correct. I also thought so. But now that the situation of our Guardian of the East has been settled, it is better not to quarrel with the 4 big families. When we become strong after the Guardian warriors, we are not afraid that they will not follow our lead. Chiyu's eyes flickered slightly and said, We cannot underestimate the strength that the 4 big families have accumulated over the years. But at least they are the Guardian of the East like us. In this situation, it is naturally the best to choose to unite against the external forces. Ryue, go back and pass the news to the 4 big families. Tell them that those Westerners have come to the country and let them monitor them closely. Whether it is from the perspective of the 4 big families' own interests or from the perspective of protecting the East, they will not refuse. Let's go find a master first and see if he knows what these Westerners are here for. As he spoke, Chiyu reluctantly jumped off the bed and put on his clothes to go out. Chiyu, Hai Ryue's pretty face blushed as she called out to him and pouted towards the window. Chiyu said somewhat helplessly, We still have to go through the window. Anyway, everyone will know sooner or later. Ryue said with slight annoyance, No, now is not the time. At least wait until you and Ming Ming confess. Otherwise, what kind of person would I become? Everyone will think that I snatched you from Ming Ming. Chiyu laughed and said, No, it is not you who snatched me. It is I who snatched you. At worst, you could tell everyone that I raped you. Anyway, I'm just a hooligan. As he said that, he laughed and jumped out of the window. Hai Ryue shook her head helplessly, but the corner of her mouth revealed a trace of a sweet smile. It was just that the weight of this hooligan in her heart was becoming heavier and heavier. When Chiyu walked back from the main entrance of the villa, he realized that jumping out of the window was absolutely unnecessary. It was already 9 o'clock in the morning. Everyone else had already gone to school or went to work. Only Zagru was sitting on the sofa in the living room reading the newspaper. Seeing Chiyu coming in from outside, the corner of his mouth revealed a trace of a knowing smile and nodded to him. Chapter 70. Zagru smiled and said, I wake up early every day. I wake up at 6 for morning practice and eat at 8. Now, I have nothing to do, don't I? You and Ryue didn't come down for breakfast this morning, and everyone asked several times. Chiyu, you'd better practice with Ryue these days. Both of you have just broken your virginity, and your vital essence will flow into each other's bodies. Only through practice can you use the vital essence you have obtained. It will be very beneficial for your practice. Chiyu coughed and said, Master, you don't have to be so clear. Do the others know about it? Zagru smiled and said, Even if they can't be sure, they can probably guess a little. Yesterday, Ryue took you away angrily, and when she came back, she changed into a different person. If it were you, what would you think? Chiyu said helplessly, It doesn't matter. Let everyone think what they think. Master, I have something to tell you. He told Zagru everything he said to Ryue in the morning, as well as the analysis of himself and Ryue. In the process of his narration, Ryue had already changed her clothes and came downstairs. She obviously didn't plan to go to work today. She deliberately wore a white cashmere dress with a high collar and a necklace outside the collar. The pendant was a beautiful heart-shaped ruby. On her shoulders was a silver mink shawl about a foot wide. The mink was only the material in the middle, and around it was a circle of white fox fur. Her long hair was naturally combed into a ponytail. She was noble and elegant. With a bit of youthful vigor, Chiyu talked to Zagru, but his eyes couldn't leave her body. The wind sweeps the tower before the mountain storm. Your judgment is very correct. Since you heard from the Greek guardian that it was the result of the Pope's astrology, then it shouldn't be wrong. Unfortunately, our Buddhist sect is not very good at divination and can only predict some good and bad things. Therefore, I can't judge what they're talking about. Chiyu frowned and said, What should we do? These Westerners can't tell us their destination. I think only their leaders really know the secret. If it doesn't work, we can find a way to catch a few of them. Then we can interrogate them and get the information out of their mouths. Ryue shook her head and said, This method won't work. Think about the origin of these Westerners. As long as the members of the Dark Council are not particularly senior, it is almost impossible to interrogate them. Most likely, there are restrictions on their bodies. Even if you captured their leaders, it would be almost impossible to get any information out of them. There is no need to talk about the Vatican. For a person with religious beliefs, if he were to tell you the secret, it would be equivalent to betraying his faith. It will be much more painful than killing them. As for the Greek guardian, we're not even sure if we can catch him. Besides, he came to our country in the name of his country. How can we make a move on him? Chiyu smiled bitterly. This won't do, that won't do. What should we do? Are we really going to keep waiting? Unfortunately, although our Zodiac Guardian warriors are powerful, we don't have anyone who can read minds. Otherwise, if we capture a Westerner, we will be able to find out his secret. At this point, Chiyu's eyes suddenly lit up. His right hand formed a fist and struck his left palm with a paw sound. He happily said, I have an idea. Ryue was surprised and said, What is it? Chiyu chuckled. We may not know how to read minds, but there are people who do. It seems that I have to go to the Shun family in the capital. Ryue, don't ask me first. In any case, just wait for me. Be careful. I will definitely give you a pleasant surprise. Ryue looked at him softly and said, I believe you. You have given me enough surprises. Let's go and have breakfast first. Then you can think about your surprise. I just call my brother. Recently, we have too many things to do. I asked him for a week's leave. This time, he will have to work hard again. Chiyu blushed and said, Ryue, last time I glared at your brother, he was not scared, right? This, I used some Kirin Thundercloud Force. I am afraid it will cause some shadow in his heart. Hi, Ryue said snappily. You think I can't see through your little trick? I have helped him to resolve it. Chiyu put on an affectionate expression as he gazed at her. Isn't that because of you? Seeing you with another man. How can I stand it? Although Chiyu had a smile on his face and didn't look serious, but after listening to his words, Ryue couldn't help but show a faint smile. She lightly punched his shoulder and smiled as she took his hand and walked to the dining room. Not far away, Uncle Joe looked at the intimate appearance of the two and couldn't help but reveal a smile on his face. After the meal, Chiyu listened to Master Zagura's suggestion and pulled Ryue back to the room. Both of their bodies had recovered, for palms pressed against each other, each according to their own meridians. Coupled with the fact that they had just lost their virginity, their breaths were very closely connected. When the cultivation began, their respective thundercloud force blended with each other, continuously completing one cloud cycle after another in their bodies. High Ryu's thundercloud force was superior in its purity, while Chiyu's thundercloud force was superior in its vastness. His four thundercloud force were all condensed from the essence of heaven and earth. With the two's thundercloud force combined, under the surging impact of the thundercloud force, High Ryu benefited a lot, but Chiyu benefited even more. The most important thing to cultivate in the early stages of the ascending Qilin method was to open the 8 extraordinary meridians. After the meridians were widened, he could absorb the energy in Kirin's blood faster and strengthen his own origin power. The stronger the origin power, the faster he could absorb Kirin's 4-attribute thundercloud force. From the beginning of cultivation until now, before Chiyu broke through to the one cloud realm, he had already opened 3 meridians. After that, with every increase of one cloud, he would also open 1 meridian. Now, he had already opened 6 of his 8 meridians. After the battle with Guei Jianshou, he had never slacked off in his cultivation because he had broken through to the 3 clouds realm. There was a qualitative leap in his strength. Although the speed at which the thundercloud force increased was not obvious, it was because his meridians had become wider. The last 2 meridians of the 8 extraordinary meridians had also loosened under the continuous impact, especially after he cultivated Kirin's 100 lightning strikes and the other 4 powerful cloud-related abilities. The loosening of these 2 meridians had become even more obvious. High Ryue was a dragon Zodiac, so their cultivation methods were of the same origin. After yesterday's yin and yang balance, because of their injuries, both of them focused on healing and didn't pay much attention to the changes in their thundercloud force. Moreover, Ryu's 8 meridians were all opened when she broke through to the 5 clouds. But today, when he calmed down and cultivated, Chiyu immediately felt different. Although he couldn't borrow Ryu's thundercloud force to open up his meridians, under the effect of Ryu's thundercloud force, the essence that he absorbed from Ryu's body yesterday gradually dissolved. This caused his 4 elemental thundercloud force to become even purer. The condensed energy actually completely opened up the last 2 meridians in one big cloud cycle cultivation. The 4 elemental Kirin's thundercloud force blended with each other in the 8 extraordinary meridians. Although it didn't directly increase Chiyu's strength for the time being, it completely brought him into another realm of cultivation. From now on, his Qilin Ascension method cultivation finally entered the second stage from the first stage, entering the high-speed channel of the next century of improvement. High Ryu naturally felt everything that happened in Chiyu's body. She herself also gained a lot of benefits from Chiyu's thundercloud force and essence. It was only because the cultivation after the 6 clouds was too difficult that she couldn't break through to a higher realm. But to be able to improve further, Ryue was naturally happy in her heart. Faint white mist surrounded High Ryu's body. Black and silver air swirled around Chiyu's body. Chiyu continuously inhaled the white mist through his nose, and then exhaled the black and silver light from his mouth for Ryue to absorb. Meanwhile, Ryue continuously exhaled white mist from her mouth. The airflow formed an ingenious cycle between the two of them. The Qilin Ascension Pearl in front of Chiyu's chest constantly changed color. Every time it changed, Chiyu's palms would also emit the same energy light. Although Ryu's palms always maintained the white jade-like luster, the changes in the thundercloud force in Chiyu's palms were also affected. 2 hours wasn't a long time. Normally, they wouldn't even be able to complete one big cloud circle. However, the two of them were connected and there was no barrier between them, so they managed to complete 3 cloud circles in 2 hours. Moreover, each cloud cycle was of high quality. Finally, when they slowly inhaled their aura back into their bodies like whales sucking in water, and when they exhaled slightly, the cultivation came to an end. Cool. Just one word. Chiyu laughed heartily as he opened his eyes. At this moment, his originally radiant eyes had become much calmer than before, but there was an additional layer of luster in his clear black and white eyes. Occasionally, a silver light would flash through them, but it was not dazzling. The Qilint's domineering aura was completely restrained, and if one was not familiar with him, they would definitely treat him as an ordinary person. At this moment, Chiyu only felt that 4 streams of air flowed through his limbs and bones. There was coolness, warmth, and also a faint refreshing and stimulating thunder and lightning. It was as if all his pores had opened up on their own, absorbing the energy molecules in the air. It was no longer like before, where he had to concentrate on cultivation and absorb the essence of heaven and earth through his nose and mouth. Hai Ryue smiled faintly and said, "Congratulations, your strength has improved again." In the past, Master Zagru often said that Kirin was the key to the Zodiac guardian god, but I always disagreed. Now it seems that I was really wrong. Since you appeared, there's been a huge change in the Zodiac guardian god warriors. The aura of Kirin that you exude makes it much easier for us to cultivate than before. Chiyu's eyes swept over Ryue's plump chest. Is this feeling especially obvious after you became my wife? Ryue glared at him and said, Can't you be a little more serious? Chiyu smiled and said, if I am serious, it proves that there is something wrong with me. Then I'm not Chiyu. He did not know that in the near future, his words would come true. The serious Chiyu is indeed no longer the Chiyu of the past. He would be the Kirin that brought fear to others and sorrow to himself. Ryue glanced at the watch on her wrist and said, It's getting late. We should prepare to keep the appointment. Do you want to contact the people from the Sacred Flames sect first? Chiyu shook his head and said, No need. Let's go directly. Anyway, we have already contacted them yesterday. Ryue, can you dress more casually? I really don't like the feeling of wearing a suit. It's too restrictive. Ryue chuckled and said, Then you can wear casual clothes. What does it have to do with me? Chiyu smiled bitterly and said, I know myself. I'm not a handsome guy to begin with. You are dressed so elegantly. If I don't wear a suit, I will obviously look like a bodyguard or a follower. Ryue smiled and caressed Chiyu's face. Silly, why do you care about what others think? It's enough as long as you are my man in my eyes. Chiyu's heart warmed, and he could not help but pull Ryue into his embrace. One of his hands had already climbed onto Ryue's ample bosom. The feeling of not being able to fully grasp it was simply too pleasurable. As the saying goes, after tasting the marrow, one would know the taste. Chiyu was not a gentleman and naturally indulged in his lust. Under the effect of his strange hands, Ryue was enveloped by a strong sense of strangeness. Moreover, the two of them had already had the most intimate contact, so she did not resist much. Her gaze gradually became blurry. Under Chiyu's teasing, Ryue's breathing gradually became heavier, and she even teased Chiyu. Fortunately, time was limited and they had to keep the appointment. Otherwise, under the teasing of a hooligan with rich theoretical knowledge, Ryue would not be able to resist at all. Until the two of them drove Ryue's Lamborghini sports car on the airport highway. Ryue's pretty face was still a little flushed. This was the first time that Chiyu drove Ryue's favorite sports car. When he first stepped on the accelerator, he already felt different. Any car that he had driven before was simply trash compared to this car. On the airport highway, with a light step on the accelerator, Chiyu only felt that the sports car seemed to have reached 100 miles per hour in an instant. F***CK. No wonder it's one of the most famous sports cars in the world. Ryue, how many seconds does it take for your car to accelerate 100 kilometers per hour? I haven't even filled the gas yet. How come it's already 100 miles per hour? Can I drive over the speed limit? The airport highway speed limit was 120 miles per hour, which was a kind of torture for this kind of supersport car. Ryue looked at Chiyu's excited face and couldn't help but smile gently. She said, press the red button on the left of the steering wheel, and then you can drive however you want. I heard from Ming Ming that you used to love racing. But you have to be careful. My Lon gets excited easily. Safety first. Chiyu pressed the red button, but he didn't feel any changes in the car. Ryu obviously saw through his doubts and smiled. That's what I should have installed later. After pressing this button, the front and back license plates will automatically turn inward, so you don't have to be afraid of being photographed for speeding. My car is a new model that I bought last year. The model number is LP640, and it uses a 6.5-liter V12 engine. The inner diameter of the cylinder is wider and deeper. Compared to the original 6.2-liter V12 engine, the new 6.5-liter engine can burst out 631 horsepower at 8,000 revolutions. At the same time, with the new 6-speed transmission, the Lamborghini LP640's acceleration time of 100 kilometers per hour is only 3.4 seconds, which is faster than the 6.2-liter version by 0.4 seconds. Don't try to speed it up. It's impossible to run on the domestic highway. 6.5-liter engine, oh my God, it's even more powerful than a Hummer. It's too powerful. Chiyu had forgotten everything at this time. As he stepped on the accelerator, the engine let out a low and sweet roar, and the speed indicator almost didn't stop climbing. Chiyu held the steering wheel in his hands dexterously, and in less than 10 seconds, the sports car under his control reached 200 miles per hour. The airport highway was only more than 20 kilometers long, and before Chiyu had time to enjoy it, he had already reached the end. The traffic environment in Beijing was really not flattering. Once you entered the city, even the best car couldn't speed up. However, the previous excitement made Chiyu feel like he had returned to the fun of racing in the past, and his eyes were shining with excitement. When Chiyu parked Ryu's precious car in the parking lot in front of Tianming Hotel, it was already 11:50 in the afternoon, 10 minutes before the appointed time. He didn't rush to get out of the car, but directly called Meng Bei. The last time Meng Bei met Chiyu, he didn't see Chiyu's real face. Therefore, Chiyu thought it was better to make a phone call first. "Mr. Chi, where are you now?" As soon as Meng Bei picked up the phone, his low voice came from the other side. "Chiyu, I'm already here, at the entrance of the hotel. What about you?" "Okay, then wait a minute, I'll go out and pick you up." He hung up the phone. Chi nodded to Hai Ryue. Although Hai Ryue previously said that it didn't matter what Chiyu wore, she still changed into a casual outfit before coming out. The blue jeans outlined the perfect curve of her buttocks and slender legs. The loose white t-shirt on her upper body couldn't hide the greatness in front of her chest. Although the attire was simple, when worn by an absolute beauty like Hai Ryue, it seemed to have a certain charm. As soon as the two got out of the car, Chiyu saw Meng Bei striding out of Tianming Hotel. Meng Bei wore a neat black suit, and the scar on his face added a bit of a fierce aura to him. A pair of deep eyes flashed coldly as he looked around for Chiyu's figure. "Brother Meng, I'm here." Chiyu took Hai Ryue's hand and walked to the entrance of the hotel. At this time, Hai Ryue's pretty face returned to its usual frosty appearance. Her gentleness was only shown in front of the man she loved, but it was not necessary for outsiders. When Meng Bei heard Chiyu's voice, he immediately turned his eyes. When he saw Chiyu and Hai Ryue, his eyes couldn't help but dull for a moment. Obviously, he didn't expect Chiyu to be so young. This pair of young people, who were also wearing jeans and white t-shirts, looked more like a couple on a university campus. They were very different from his impression of psychics. But he quickly recovered from his surprise. Although it was the first time he saw Chiyu's real face, he was no stranger to Chiyu's tall figure. Of course, wearing such thin clothes in such cold weather was enough to show that they were not ordinary people. At the same time, Meng Bei also noticed the precious car next to them. "Hello, Mr. Chi." Meng Bei strode forward and extended his right hand to Chiyu. Chiyu reached out and shook hands with him. He smiled and said, "We shouldn't be late." Meng Bei's hand was hard with calluses, and it gave people a feeling of strength. As soon as the two shook hands, Chiyu felt the other party's steel-like hand quickly tighten. He didn't know that this was a way for people in the underworld to meet each other. He still had a good impression of Meng Bei, so he didn't fight back. Even if Chiyu's right hand didn't use any thundercloud force or Kirin's energy, because of Kirin's arm, the hardness was comparable to a diamond. Therefore, he smiled and let Meng Bei hold it as if nothing had happened. Meng Bei exerted force 3 times in a row, but he was the one in pain. Chi Yu's hand was very big, even bigger than his. No matter how much strength he used, his hand was as steady as a rock and maintained the posture of shaking hands with him. Hai Ryue glanced at Meng Bei's hand. She could tell what he was doing from the bulging veins on the back of his hand. She couldn't help but feel annoyed. She snorted and said, "Hello, Mr. Meng Bei. I'm Hai Ryue." As she said that, she extended her hand to Meng Bei. Meng Bei took this opportunity to get out of the embarrassing situation. He quickly let go of Chi Yu's hand and shook Hai Ryue's hand. This was the first time Hai Ryue had seen Meng Bei. Seeing him shake Chi Yu's hand hard, with her temper, she naturally wouldn't let her own people be bullied. Her right hand instantly turned into a pair of iron pincers. Meng Bei's expression changed instantly. No matter how hard he tried, the bones in his hand still made cracking sounds. It looked like they were about to be crushed by Ryue. "All right, Ryue, if you keep shaking hands with him, I'm going to get jealous." Chi Yu smiled and gently pulled Ryue's hand back. Meng Bei let out a sigh of relief and said with an awkward expression, "Please come in. My boss has been waiting for you for a long time." As he said that, he didn't dare to delay and quickly walked inside. As he walked, he hit his right hand in front of his body and rubbed it hard with his left hand. He knew that he wouldn't be able to use his right hand normally for at least a week. That delicate-looking girl was really scary. Chi Yu and Hai Ryue followed Meng Bei all the way to the 3rd floor of Tianming Hotel. The hotel didn't look luxurious from the outside. It couldn't even be considered a star-rated hotel, but the interior decoration was very elegant and very clean. Meng Bei brought the two to a private room on the 3rd floor and stopped. He raised his hand and knocked on the door twice. He said in a low voice, "Sect Master, the guests are here." A hoarse and strange voice sounded. "Invite the guests in." Meng Bei pushed the door open. He stepped aside and made a gesture to Chi Yu and Hai Ryue to invite them in. Chi Yu pulled Hai Ryue into the private room, and the two people came out to greet them. Seeing these two people, Chi Yu's pupils couldn't help but contract. Chi Yu didn't go to school much, so he didn't know the real meaning of the word wretched. But now he suddenly understood, because the two people standing in front of Chi Yu and Hai Ryue were simply the best explanation of the word. Chi Yu was more than 1.9 meters tall, and Ryue was about 1.8 meters tall. Both of them were tall, and the two men standing in front of them were about 1.6 meters tall. They only reached around Chi Yu's chest, and they were almost a head shorter than Ryue. Both of them were very thin. Perhaps this was their common characteristic. The one standing on the left had a head of short, messy hair that seemed to be stuck together. He hadn't showered for at least a week. His skin looked a little rough, not too dark but not too white either. His small eyes looked shifty, and the glasses hanging from his ears were as thick as the bottom of a bottle. He wore a cotton-padded jacket, the kind that the police wore to ward off the cold in winter, but it was already quite greasy. His pants were black, and there were a few white marks on them. There was a cigarette in the corner of his mouth, and his neck was a little shrunk. His eyes, hidden behind the bottom glasses, were full of lasciviousness and obscenity. What surprised Chi the most was that this guy was barefoot, and he was wearing a pair of flip-flops. The size of the slippers was obviously a little too big, and when he walked, they made some uncivilized sounds. The one on the right was not much stronger than the one on the left. He was also bald, had small eyes, and wore glasses. Compared to the one on the left, he was thinner. He had prominent ears, an aquiline nose, and a toad's mouth. There wasn't even any obscenity in his small eyes, only lasciviousness. He was missing one of his front teeth, and the cigarette was stuck there. Even if he opened his mouth to speak, it wouldn't affect him. He was wearing a slightly torn suit, but he was wearing a pair of large underpants. He didn't know if this guy was cold, as he wasn't wearing slippers. However, when paired with the large underpants, the slippers seemed to be better than wearing black leather shoes without socks. Once he saw Ryue, his eyes lit up with lasciviousness, and he was almost drooling. When these two brothers stood together, they would definitely be a standard wretched and lascivious duo. They couldn't be the bosses of the Sacred Flame sect, right? This was too. Just as Chi Yu and Hai Ryue were shocked, The lascivious guy on the left chuckled and said, "Hello, I'm Hu Guang, and this is my assistant, Ian. I didn't expect you to be so young, brother. This beauty is really beautiful. I've seen countless women, but this is the first time I've seen such a perfect beauty. Brothers Chi, you're really lucky." As he spoke, his small eyes, which were hidden behind the glasses at the bottom of the bottle, rolled around. Hai Ruyue frowned, and her pretty face was shrouded in a faint layer of coldness. Bullsh asterisk T, Bullsh asterisk T, it stinks. Ming Ming, you're the assistant. Brothers Chi, don't listen to him. I'm the leader of the Sacred Flame sect. You're the one who's Bullsh asterisk T, Sean. Did you faint from having sex last night? Ming Ming, I'm the leader. I'm the leader. F asterisk CK. Are you looking for a fight? If you're not convinced, come at me. The two lascivious guys started quarreling in front of Chi Yu and Hai Ruyue. They didn't look like the leaders of a big underworld gang, but more like two hooligans on the streets. They were already lascivious, but after quarreling, their faces and necks turned red. Their expressions were indescribable. Meng Bei saw that Chi Yu and Hai Ruyue didn't look too good. He quickly coughed and said, "Leaders, why don't we invite the guests in first and talk after they've sat down? You've been fighting for so many years. Let's stop fighting today." Hu Guang snorted and said, "Who's willing to fight with him? He's just AB asterisk TCH. Brother Chi, this beautiful sister, come in and have a seat." And didn't show any weakness. "TSK, I knew you were scared. Both of you please come in." No matter what, they made way and didn't block the door anymore. Chi Yu really wanted to turn and leave, but when he thought of the Sacred Flame sect's huge intelligence network, he held it in. He had never thought that the Sacred Flame sect would have someone as calm as Meng Bei, but their leader would be like this. He laughed bitterly and pulled Hai Ruyue into the room. The decorations in the room were very elegant. A table for 10 was already set with food and wine. The five of them took their seats. Although Hu Guang and Ian were quarreling fiercely, they naturally sat together. They were already short, and when they sat down, they were obviously shorter. The two of them leaned against the back of the chair and glared at each other. They picked up their chopsticks at the same time and said to Chi Yu and Hai Ruyue, "Don't stand on ceremony, please." Chi Yu didn't move, and neither did Hai Ruyue. The other party was a gang after all, and they had to be cautious. They didn't come here to eat anyway. Smiling, Chi Yu said calmly, "I'm afraid the two leaders invited me here not just to eat, right? If there's anything, please say it directly. I'm very grateful for the help from the Sacred Flames sect yesterday." Hu Guang put down his chopsticks, and his small eyes flashed. His gaze suddenly became unusually sharp, staring at Chi Yu, giving him a feeling of unease. With Chi Yu's aura, he could feel such a feeling from the other party's gaze. Hu Guang thought to himself that the Sacred Flame sect's leader was indeed extraordinary. All right, Brother Chi is a straightforward person. Good, Brother Chi is a straightforward person. We brothers invited you here today for no other reason. Last time you helped us. Although the writing was secondary, you saved the lives of dozens of our brothers. Although I, Hu Guang, am not a good person, I must repay such a great kindness. Yesterday's matter was just a small matter. Please accept this check, brother." As he spoke, he took out a crumpled piece of paper from his police uniform and handed it to Chi Yu. Chapter 71. In had one foot on his chair and was eating with his body slanted. Hearing Chi Yu's surprise, he could not help but chuckle and quickly stuff the food and his chopsticks into his mouth. "What's 10 million? Compared to the lives of my brothers, money is just a worldly possession. Brother Chi, you don't think it's too little, do you?" Chi rolled his eyes. "Too little? I've never seen so much money in my life. Since I can't refuse your kindness, I'll accept it. Thank you, sect masters." If the other party was in the drug business, perhaps Chi you would not have accepted the money. However, the Sacred Flame sect was in the arms business. Chi was not the kind of gentleman who knew how to repay favors. He was a ruffian and was in need of money. Why would he not accept it? This could be considered as taking it in the right way. Seeing Chi Yu accept the money happily, Hu Guang could not help but be surprised. He sat next to Chi Yu and immediately extended his hand to Chi Yu, saying, "All right, we're brothers from now on." If there's anything you need our help with, just let us know. Chi Yu shook hands with Hu Guang. To his surprise, Hu Guang, who looked sloppy and wretched on the surface, actually had a hand as fair as a woman's. His hand was very small and very soft to hold. Not only was his skin fine, but it was even a little slippery. It was hard to hold it firmly in one's palm. His hand was not stable, but it seemed to be floating. A faint energy wrapped around his hand, and the energy was completely restrained, forming an effective defense. This prevented Chi Yu from sensing his true strength. Hu Guang had a completely different feeling towards Chi Yu. The feeling that Chi Yu gave him was like an illusory black hole. It seemed like there was nothing in it, but it gave him a feeling of fear. After a simple handshake, both of them had surprised expressions in their eyes. Hu Guang chuckled and said, "Looks like we really are kindred spirits. Meng Bei, you go out and keep watch. Don't let anyone disturb me without my permission." Meng Bei agreed and got up to leave. Hu Guang said, "A straightforward person doesn't beat around the bush." When I heard Meng Bei's report, I was very interested in Brother Chi's ability. Sean and I also have our own abilities, but we always feel that the energy in our bodies is very large, but we can't find a good way to use it. Therefore, we would like to communicate with Brothers Chi and see if we can get some inspiration. Of course, we don't want to know Brothers Chi's cultivation method. We just want to ask you how to use this special ability to bring out all the energy. Although firearms and explosives were rampant in this world, the stronger one was, the better the living conditions would be. It's not easy for us to do the underworld. You have to be careful when you go out to visit prostitutes for fear of being shot in the back. Ian pursed his lips and said, "Who doesn't know that you can do it 7 times a night, 1 minute each time, and that includes foreplay?" Hu Guang was furious. F*CK. I'm F*King talking about serious business. Can you not interrupt? Hello. The last time I was flirting with a female student, she took away your wallet. To think that you're the deputy sect leader of the Sacred Flame sect. Looking at their hooligan habits of exposing each other's scars, Chi Yu felt much friendlier. He chuckled and said, "I say, can the two of you stop quarreling? Brother Hu Guang, what is your special ability? You should also know that the way in which special abilities are manifested is different. I'm not sure if your special ability has anything in common with mine. If there isn't, even if I want to help you, I'm afraid I won't be able to." Hu Guang and Ian looked at each other. Ian said, "There are very few people who know that we have special abilities, and there are very few people who have even seen us. Since we've invited Brothers Chi here today, we don't treat you as an outsider. All right, old Hu, are you going first or should I go first?" Hu Guang laughed and said, "I'll go first. Who asked me to be your big brother?" As he said that, Hu Guang's small body stood up from his seat and took a step back. His small eyes hidden behind his glasses flashed, and his originally black pupils gradually turned green. His body seemed to have grown a lot taller, and with a slight shake of his shoulders, all the bones of his body seemed to have disappeared in an instant. With a nimble turn of his mind, he actually squeezed through the gap in the back of the chair. His movements weren't fast, but seemed to be full of power. Suddenly, his body that had passed through the chair moved like lightning, and his left hand suddenly extended forward. Chi Yu could clearly see that at this moment, his fingernails had already turned black. He grabbed the wall next to him, and suddenly, with a loud pu-pu sound, 5 small black holes appeared in the wall. What was even more shocking was that the 5 holes that were pierced by his fingers were actually gradually expanding, and green liquid slowly flowed down the wall. There was no smell, but the strong corrosive force carried with it an intense and terrifying aura. "Poison," Ryue exclaimed in a low voice, and looked at Hu Guang's eyes with a trace of nervousness. All the bones in Hu Guang's body made cracking sounds, and his movements suddenly became faster. He withdrew his left hand, and the surface of his skin emitted a faint layer of green light. His body actually directly stuck to the wall, and with a slight twist of his body, he circled around the wall 3 times like lightning. Chi Yu and Ryue only saw a blur in front of their eyes, and Hu Guang had already returned to his seat, as if nothing had happened. Even the 5 holes on the wall that were pierced by his fingers had disappeared, and not even the liquid was left behind. Such fast movements, such a poisonous aura. Chi-Yu and Ryue looked at each other, and in their hearts, they had some understanding of Hu Guang's ability. It's my turn. Ian looked very excited, and he suddenly jumped up from the chair. His limbs were slightly longer than the average person's, and when he jumped up from the chair, his eyes emitted a yellow light, and in an instant he stuck to the corner of the wall. However, he clearly did not have the ability to stick to the wall like Hu Guang, so he used the force to jump up again and began to move in the air. In the beginning, Chi-Yu could still see his figure clearly, but gradually, Ian's speed increased and only a faint white light was left. Every time he jumped up, there would be an ear-piercing whistle. Chi had always thought that his speed was not bad, but the speed that Ian displayed was not something that he could compare with. That was an explosive speed, and, at the same time, he was very patient. From a moment his body jumped up until he returned to the dining table, his speed had always been increasing. It was hard to imagine to what extent he could reach when he used his full strength. Ian picked up his chopsticks again without a blush and said, "My ability mainly lies in speed and the variety of attacks. I have tested it with the equipment. When my speed reaches the limit, within a certain range, I can reach the speed of sound, and the attacks that use speed to bring about are very sharp." As he spoke, the sharp claws on his hands quietly disappeared, and the yellow light flashing in his eyes also returned to normal. Hu Guang asked a little anxiously, "Brothers Qi, did you find anything from us?" Chi-Yu and Hai Ryue looked at each other, and both of them laughed. Chi-Yu said, "You can wear out iron shoes in fruitless searching, but by chance you find it without even looking for it. Brothers, you have found the right person this time." As he spoke, his eyes suddenly lit up, and with a special tone, he slowly said, "With the blood of Kirin as the guide, I call upon you in the name of Kirin, the 12 warriors of the Zodiac who guard the East. Show your Zodiac signs." Chi-Yu raised his right hand, bit his middle finger, and gently flicked it in the air. A drop of blood floated out, and Chi-Yu made a strange hand gesture. The drop of blood suddenly floated away, and a very faint red light spread out in a circle, enveloping the entire private room. Before Hu Guang and Sein could react, their bodies had already changed. Both of them changed almost at the same time. A black shadow appeared behind Hu Guang, and in the shadow, there were 2 spots of green light that were extremely obvious. It was the shadow of a black snake, and behind Ian, a monkey with golden hair appeared. A pair of eyes flashed with a gem-like orange light, and every time it flashed, the energy aura became a little stronger. Even the calm Ryue could not help but be overjoyed. "Great, we finally found 2 more." Hu Guang and Ian looked at the shadows behind each other, and their eyes revealed a playful light. Hu Guang said, "Brother Qi, what is going on? Don't you think you should explain to us?" With a slight smile, Chi-Yu's eyes shone brightly. "Explain? Of course I have to explain. Big brother Hu Guang, you were right. We are brothers, and we will be even more so in the future. We have to start from the beginning. In our Yin Huang land, a group of guardians has appeared since a long time ago. There are a total of 13 people, and 12 of them have their own zodiac signs. They all have their own zodiac signs. And the last one is the king of the zodiac, Kirin. These 13 people form the Zodiac Guardian. You should be aware of your situation. Big brother Ian is the monkey of this generation's Zodiac Guardian, and big brother Hu Guang is the snake." "Zodiac Guardian? But it sounds cool." Hu Guang muttered to himself, recalling his own situation. It was indeed as Chi-Yu had said. His ability was indeed very similar to that of a snake, and Ian's ability was also very similar to that of a monkey. In the Sacred Flame sect, Hu Guang was mainly responsible for internal affairs, big and small, while Ian was responsible for external operations. This was because he was extremely intelligent. Ian looked at Chi-Yu. "What about you guys? Are you also this Zodiac Guardian?" Chi-Yu smiled slightly and said, "That's right, we are. You should have heard my incantation just now. We're all on the same side. I'm the Kirin of the Zodiac Guardian, and this Hai Ryue is the dragon of the Zodiac Guardian. Of course, she's also my wife." Ian scratched his head and stepped on the chair with one foot. He said, If being a Zodiac Guardian can also get such a beautiful wife, I don't even want to be the leader of the Sacred Flame sect anymore. Chiyu said, looking at both of you, you should have awakened your abilities innately. It's just that there's no real cultivation method to guide you, so you can't unleash your full abilities. How about this? You guys come back with us, and I'll ask the master to teach you the cultivation method that belongs to you. From now on, your abilities will become stronger and stronger. Hu Guang was puzzled. If we were to learn the cultivation method from you guys, would we be restricted in the future? Chiyu was stunned. Hai Ryue said, there are no restrictions between the Zodiac Guardian warriors. We're all partners. Our mission is to protect the East, to protect the land of Yanhuan. Only when the enemy appears will we need to work together to solve the problem. At that time, you guys just don't run away. Ian smiled bitterly and said, what a loss, what a loss. I originally wanted to get a helper, but now we've become your helpers. Isn't this a loss? We even lost 10 million. If I had known this would happen, I wouldn't have tried to rope you in. Chiyu laughed and said, big brother Ian, you can't think that way. If the Sacred Flame sect encounters any trouble in the future, as long as it's a reason that we can accept, you guys won't just get a helper, but the help of all the Zodiac Guardian warriors. We're all brothers, so it's natural for us to help each other. Hu Guang's small eyes darted around. He thought to himself that this seemed like a good deal. There didn't seem to be any harm in joining the ranks of the Zodiac Guardian warriors. Moreover, he could get the help of a group of powerful Zodiac Guardian warriors. Even if there was any trouble in the future, he and Ian could just back out. He was from the underworld, so everything would naturally be done from the perspective of benefits. After some simple thinking, he exchanged a look with Ian. Both of their gazes turned lewd at the same time. Ian chuckled and said, old Hu, what do you think? Hu Guang said, I'm fine. It's a good thing to be able to strengthen ourselves. It's up to you. Ian chuckled and said, have you forgotten our slogan? Although I hate you, I don't want to be separated from you. Moreover, what if you become stronger and bully me? Then let's be the Zodiac Guardian warriors. Hu Guang laughed weirdly and said, I'm more cowardly than you, and you're more despicable than me. Ian chuckled and said, you're more cowardly than me, and I'm despicable. Our relationship is stronger than gold. Hu Guang's gaze became even more lewd. I'm more playful than you, and you're more despicable than me. Ian jumped to his side and put his arm around Hu Guang's shoulder. He said, you're playful, and I'm despicable. What a lecherous role model. Chiyu and Hai Ryue stared at the two wretched people in front of them in bewilderment. They really didn't know what to say. Hai Ryue thought in her heart, Chiyu was lascivious enough in the past, but these two guys in front of her were lascivious and wretched. She really didn't know how God chose them. Why were the Zodiac Guardian warriors so weird? Hu Guang and Ian both showed great interest in the Zodiac Guardian warriors. Chiyu and Hai Ryue also put down their scruples. As the four of them ate, Hai Ryue briefly explained the current situation of the Zodiac Guardian warriors. She secretly calculated in her heart. So far, 9 of the 12 Zodiac Guardian warriors had appeared. Only the ox, pig, and horse had not appeared. After eating and drinking to their heart's content, Hu Guang smiled obscenely at Chiyu. Brothers Chi, we still have a lot of things to deal with, so we won't go to your place today. Later, Ian and I will hand over all the things to our subordinates, and then go to see Master Zagru you mentioned. Just now you said there was a goddess in Greece. F***CK. Who cares if she's a god or not? Just do it and be done with it. Ian rarely agreed with Hu Guang's opinion. That's right, Brothers Chi. If you're embarrassed, just leave it to me. I never refuse beautiful women. Even Chiyu couldn't stand the two's naked words. After all, Hai Ryue was beside him. She's a goddess after all. When I was investigating yesterday, that purple-haired girl whose name I don't know hid her aura very well. Moreover, I was discovered even after I restrained my aura. We will solve this matter. Even if they are strong, our Zodiac Guardian warriors are not to be trifled with. Brothers, you haven't officially started practicing the Ascending Cloud technique, so I won't trouble you with this matter. However, I hope to use the Sacred Flame Sect's intelligence network in the future. Know yourself and know your enemy, and you will always be victorious. Hu Guang immediately agreed. That's easy. If you need any intelligence in the future, just call Meng Bei directly. Call Meng Bei directly. Meng Bei is our direct subordinate. He's definitely trustworthy. However, you must keep the fact that we are the Zodiac Guardian Warriors a secret. Even to our companions who are also Zodiac Guardian Warriors, I hope that you won't tell anyone about my and An's identities. Yu smiled faintly and replied, I understand. After all, both of you are from the underworld. However, I really admire you for being able to establish such a big underworld gang like the Sacred Flame Sect at such a young age. Ian laughed. Admire my ass. The Sacred Flame Sect wasn't founded by the two of us. The Sacred Flame Sect has a history of more than 100 years. When we founded the sect, it was to defend against foreign invaders. After the establishment of the Yanhuang Republic, our Sacred Flame Sect went underground. After so many years, our intelligence network is definitely top-notch. Hu Guang and I's great-grandfather. He's the founder of the Sacred Flame Sect. It's already the 4th generation in our generation. However, the scale of the Sacred Flame Sect is too big. It has always been a family. Although the two of us are the leaders of the sect on the surface, we can't decide everything by ourselves. There are also 4 elders in the sect who came down with us. Their ancestors made great contributions to the establishment of the Sacred Flame Sect with our 2 great-grandfathers. In terms of seniority, they're 1 generation older than the 2 of us. Therefore, we need to go through the elders to make any important decisions. I think you should understand that these elders can't be of one mind with us. Therefore, we have to hide our powers. The more our opponents underestimate us, the higher our chances of survival. Yu nodded and said, Then let's call it day. Ryue and I will go back first. We'll wait for you 2 brothers tomorrow. Hu Guang and Ian didn't send Yu and Hai Ryue off. Perhaps it was because they didn't want their identities to be exposed. After getting into Hai Ryue's precious sports car, Yu immediately laughed out loud. Hai Ryue said, What are you laughing at? Yu laughed as he said, I finally know what it means to be extremely wretched. These 2 brothers are really too strong. What do you mean by you and I'm loose? They're definitely a lascivious duo. Compared to Big Brother Sudong, they're much more direct. If Big Brother Sudong is walking the upper 3 paths, then they're walking the lower 3 paths. Once they join our camp, I'm much more confident. Compared to them, my image is still considered good. Hai Ryue said unhappily, You can't judge a book by its cover. To be able to sit in the position of the head of such a big underworld gang, how can they be ordinary? Although these 2 guys talk lasciviously, they're very cautious when dealing with problems. I don't think they have much trust in us. They only joined our Zodiac Guardian camp out of consideration for their own interests. Yu hugged Hai Ryue, leaned forward and lightly pecked her red lips, saying, This isn't something we need to worry about. Let me ask you, when we first joined the Zodiac Guardian Warrior camp, which one of us didn't have doubts? But so what? Everyone had calmly accepted their identities and responsibilities. This can be said to be the credit of Great Master Zagru. Great Master is an eminent monk who has inherited the power of Buddha for 10 generations. He's not someone ordinary people can compare to. His charisma can almost influence anyone. When Hu Guang and Ian arrive at Dragon Field Courtyard tomorrow, I think they'll also become like us. This time, we have 2 more powerful helpers. They're even older than Big Brother Guan Ping, and they're both innate awakened. I think as long as they practice the Ascending Cloud Art, when they completely straighten out their Thundercloud Force, their power will definitely not be weak. They'll at least be at the level of 4 or 5 clouds. Hai Ryue held Chiyu's big hand and said, You're very accurate. I also feel that both of them have huge energy. They just lack knowledge and effective guidance. All right, where are we going now? Chiyu thought for a moment, then took out his phone and said, Jita still hasn't contacted me. I think I should contact him first. I don't know how Ming Ming is doing. While saying that, he dialed Jita's number. Master. Jita's voice sounded a bit low. Chiyu said, What's wrong? When will Ming Ming and that kid called Lin E fan meet? Jita said, Master, I didn't do a good job. I've told Old Master what you mean. Although Old Master knows that what you said is very reasonable, The marriage that he agreed to at the beginning can be said to represent the country. Even Old Master doesn't dare to make a decision easily. Ming Ming went to class during the day, and Lin Yifan asked her to meet tonight. Old Master said that it's best if you don't show up tonight. Hearing this, Chiyu's face suddenly darkened, but he didn't say much to Jida. He just said lightly, "I know, it's not your fault." After saying that, he directly hung up the phone. On the other side, Jida faintly felt that something was wrong. Although he didn't see Chiyu's crazy look when he was fighting for Ming Ming, he still had some understanding of Chiyu's temper. However, he had some understanding of Chiyu's temper and prayed in his heart, "Boss, please don't cause trouble. This is not only related to you and Ming Ming, but at the same time, it is also related to our country." "What's wrong?" Ryue saw that Chiyu didn't look too good, so she asked with concern. Chiyu shook his head, took out his phone, and directly dialed Ming Ming's number. When Ming Ming's voice sounded on the other side of the phone, it sounded a little hoarse. "Chiyu, Ming Ming, what's wrong with you? Did you cry?" Chiyu asked in a low voice. "You know everything, right?" Ming Ming's voice suddenly became a little choked. "Chiyu, I don't know what to do now. Yesterday, Dad and I talked for a long time, and I told him about us. But Dad said that this is related to our country's diplomacy with Greece, and we can't be careless. And how can we go back on what we have promised? But you suffered such a serious injury because of me last time, and we're sharing a heart now. How can I leave you to go to Greece? Although there is still time, even if I delay it, my 20th birthday is getting closer and closer." Listening to Ming Ming's words, Chiyu's eyes were already flashing with a frightening cold light. Ryue worriedly held Chiyu's big hand tightly, but she didn't expect Chiyu to suddenly laugh at this time. At least from his voice, he sounded very relaxed. "Silly Ming Ming, don't cry. I said that I will protect you. No matter what difficulties there are, you still have me in front of you. It won't be that easy for that guy from Greece to take you away. All right, be a good girl and don't worry about anything. I will naturally deal with it, okay? If it really doesn't work, I'll at most go to Greece with you in the future." At first, Ming Ming was stunned. Perhaps she was affected by Chiyu's relaxed tone, but her nerves were a little more relaxed. "Chiyu, I really don't know what to do." "Then don't think about it. Focus on your lessons. I promise you, I will definitely deal with this matter." After continuing to comfort Ming Ming for a while, Chiyu hung up the phone. Leaning against the back of the chair, he lit a cigarette for himself. Ryue was a little worried. "Chiyu, are you okay?" Chiyu shook his head and said, "It's nothing. I'm just thinking about what to do now." Ryue sighed and said, if Ming Ming really marries to Greece, will you really go with her?" Chiyu smiled and held Ryue's small hand tightly. "That's impossible, unless I'm dead." His words were very relaxed, but there was a kind of unquestionable valiance in his words. His eyes flashed with a faint cold light. He took a deep breath of the cigarette and puffed out a round eye ring. Starting the car, Chiyu drove the car towards Long Yu courtyard. While driving, he said, "Ryue, I will send you back first. Then I thought of Qingbei to see Ming Ming first. Just now, from the phone, I heard that she is very hesitant. I must first help her stabilize her mind. At the same time, I have to see another person. I will definitely solve Ming Ming's matter. At the same time, I will also deal with those Westerners who came to our Yanhuang land." Ryue said, "Then I will go with you." Chiyu shook his head and said, "No, it's better for me to see that person by myself. Don't worry, if I go with Ming Ming to see that Lin Yifan at night, I will definitely call you. Oh right, this check is for you." While speaking, he handed the check given by Hu Guang to Ryue. Ryue giggled and said, "You really have a nerve to take so much money from others." Chiyu smiled and said, "What's there to be embarrassed about? Anyway, I lack money, and they're all rich people. I also saved so many of their subordinates, so I deserve it. I don't even know how to deal with the check. Anyway, you are my wife, so what's mine is yours. Deduct what I owe you from before, and treat the rest as my rent in Longyu. Don't say you don't want it. I am a man. I can't live off a woman." Ryue smiled and said, "Who said I don't want it? What's yours is mine, and what's mine is still mine. Of course I want it. 10 million is not a small amount." Seeing that Chi didn't seem to be affected by Ming's matter, she also felt relieved. Chi smiled bitterly and said, "Are all women so greedy for money? You should at least give me some pocket money later." After sending Ruyue back to Longyu Courtyard, Chi left the car so that Ruyue could meet him at night. He drove Wenting's BMW out of the courtyard again and headed in the direction of Qingbei University. As for Wenting, Ruyue didn't have the time to ask him, and it seemed that she didn't want to ask. After all, they were both Zodiac guardian warriors like Ming. With their understanding of Kirin, they didn't want to restrict Chi too much. This also made Chi, a lascivious guy, more universal love in the near future. Although the feeling of driving a BMW was far inferior to a Lamborghini, it was still good. It was just that the BMW 3 Series was a little small for Chi. In order not to attract attention, he deliberately put on a coat in the afternoon. Because it was far from the rush hour, there were relatively few cars on the road. As Chi drove, he was secretly thinking about Ming's matter. His thinking was very simple. He couldn't let Ming marry to Greece. He couldn't even give that brat called Lin Yifan any chance to get close to Ming. Chi had long treated Ming as his woman. For a hoodlum, if anyone touched his woman, it would be violating his taboo. When Chi arrived in front of Qingbei University, it was already 3 in the afternoon. The lunchtime was really not short. Looking at Qingbei's tall and simple school gate, he couldn't help but sigh in his heart. A few months ago, he was still a part of it, but in the end, he left the school with expulsion. His university dream was also ruined because of this. Thinking of being expelled, he naturally thought of Su Qing. Last time, Shenyan said that Su Qing had already left the school. I wonder how she is now. Did she leave because of guilt towards me? Why did she do this? While thinking, Chi parked the car in front of Qingbei University. He locked the car door and strolled towards Qingbei. His main reason for coming to Qingbei was not for Ming. He didn't explain it to Hai Ruyue. Actually, his main reason for coming this time was because of Shun Yun, or it could be said that it was because of Shun Yun's Soulstorm ability. Since Soulstorm has the effect of controlling other people's thoughts, why not use it? Chapter 72. Su Qing stood in front of Qingbei Gate and looked inside. From her back, she looked thinner than before. Her red-down jacket looked very bright and beautiful. Her long hair was combed into a ponytail, and her hands were in her pockets. She looked a little lonely. As the saying goes, enemies don't meet unless they're enemies. Since he already saw her, Chi naturally wouldn't run away. He walked behind Su Qing with large strides and patted her shoulder lightly. Su Qing jumped in fright and turned around. When she saw Chi, the expression on her face immediately froze. She never thought that she would meet Chi here, the person she didn't want to see the most. In her eyes, Chi seemed to be even taller than before. There was a bit more heroic spirit between his brows. He still had that naughty smile on his face as he looked at her with a gentle gaze. Seeing him again, Su Qing suddenly felt that Chi seemed to have changed, but she couldn't tell what changed. What? Don't recognize me? Beautiful lady. Chi took the initiative to greet her. Su Qing said with a bit of a stutter, Why are you here? Chi smiled indifferently and said, Who said that you can't come back after being expelled? What's more, I'm not here to go to school. I heard from Shunyan that you're not in Qingbei anymore. What's the point? Qingbei is such a good school. It's related to your future. Hearing Chi words, Su Qing suddenly became excited. Isn't it all because of you? If it wasn't for you, would I be able to leave? Speaking up to here, she suddenly stopped. Her face became somewhat pale. She lowered her head and silently said, Chi, I'm sorry. Chi lightly sighed and shook his head. Didn't I tell Shinyan to tell you? I didn't blame you. If that matter is traced back, the responsibility should be on me. Actually, there's no need for you to leave Qingbei. I've never hated you for anything. I'm a man and you're a woman. I'm not that narrow-minded, so don't mind it too much. Su Qing raised her head and looked at Chi. His voice was a little strange as he asked, Do you really not hate me? Chi shrugged and said, Why should I hate you? Su Qing's eyes were slightly red as she said, But, at that time, I clearly felt that Sister Yun had a very good impression of you. I was afraid. Chi chuckled. I understand. I've known about your relationship since a long time ago. That's why I said that if we trace back to the past, I'm the one to blame for this. I don't deny that I have feelings for Sister Yin, but I didn't expect you to be so extreme. Later, I thought about it carefully. From another perspective, if my woman could be snatched away by someone else, perhaps I would be more extreme than you. When he said this, he thought of the trouble that Ming Ming and Greece had caused, and a cold light flashed in his eyes. Suddenly feeling the chill from Chi Yu's body, Su Qing couldn't help but tremble. She whispered, "So, you already knew. Since you knew, why are you still so close to Sister Yin?" Chi Yu sighed and said, "I don't discriminate against homosexuals, but don't forget that I'm a normal man, and I've never denied that I'm a hooligan. Facing beautiful women like you every day, if I don't have any thoughts, then wouldn't I be impotent? This is human nature, and it can also be said that it's a man's deep-rooted bad habit." Su Qing looked at Chi Yu with tears in her eyes. When Chi Yu was fired, she realized that after this man, who she should have hated, left, she didn't become happy. Instead, she missed the life that she used to have with him. Yes, after spending so much time together, they had already entered each other's lives. It seemed that she was really wrong. When Chi Yu saw that Su Qing was not speaking and saw that her face was thinner than before, he could not help but feel pity for her. "Qing'er, are you all right? Where are you working now?" Su Qing replied, "I'm at a school not far from here. I transferred there not long after you left. I don't know why, but when we were living in our original dormitory, I would feel very uncomfortable whenever I saw your door. Chi Yu, thank you for forgiving me. I was wrong that time. I only wanted to scare you and teach you a lesson, but I didn't expect it to be so big. I'm really sorry." Seeing that Su Qing was about to cry, Chi Yu quickly said, "All right, don't always say sorry and don't cry. Otherwise, others will misunderstand if they see it. Of course, if others misunderstand that you want to rape me, I'm more than willing." Looking at Chi Yu's somewhat comical expression, Su Qing couldn't help smiling through her tears. She lightly hit his chest and said, "You're still so hateful." Chi Yu smiled and said, "You're still so cute. Don't tell me you're wearing a t-shirt or lace today." Su Qing's pretty face blushed. "You?" Although she was shy, Chi Yu's words also evoked memories of the autumn outing in Qingbei. Thinking of a night's swim with this man in front of her, her heart couldn't help but beat a few beats. "Chi Yu, are you looking for Ming Ming or Sister Yin?" Chi Yu said, "If I tell you that I'm looking for both, will you be angry?" Su Qing shook her head and said sadly, "Although you've forgiven me, I can see that Sister Yin and Ming Ming treat me differently." After that incident, although Sister Yin didn't say anything, she wasn't as close to me as she used to be. It was obvious that she had distanced herself from me. I knew it was all my fault. I was really sad. They're my only friends. Chi Yu comforted her. "How can that be?" That day, Ming Ming told me that we'll have a meal together when we have the chance. Don't worry, Ming Ming is a broad-minded girl. She won't hate you. Oh, by the way, there's something you might not know. Ming Ming is now officially my girlfriend. Be happy for me." Su Qing was stunned for a moment and said, "Aren't you brother and sister?" Chi Yu smiled and said, "I won't explain it to you. Anyway, you just need to know that Ming Ming is my girlfriend." Su Qing looked at Chi Yu deeply. She couldn't understand why an outstanding girl like Ming Ming would fall for Chi Yu. Chi Yu could be said to be incompetent and had been expelled before he even finished his university studies. In terms of appearance, he was far inferior to Ming Ming. She didn't know how many handsome and outstanding scholars chased after her in Qingbei, but they were all rejected by her. She didn't expect that in the end, she would actually follow Chi Yu. Chi Yu smiled and said, "Don't you believe me? Haven't you heard that a good man doesn't have a good wife? Although I'm not very outstanding, Ming Ming has taken a fancy to a ruffian like me. You're waiting for Xinyan here, right? Then I'll also wait here with you. Also call Ming Ming out. I don't know what class Ming Ming has today." As he said that, he took out his phone and dialed Ming Ming's number again. "Chi Yu." Ming Ming's voice sounded lighter than before. "Ming Ming, when are you done with class?" "I'm already done with class and on my way back to the dormitory. Dad might send someone to pick me up later." Then, "Chi Yu, I understand. You can come out now. I'm at the Qing Bay Gate. If you see Xinyan, call her out too. I have something to talk to her about. Ah, you're here? Chi-Yu, but Dad. Chi-Yu smiled indifferently and said, You can come out first. I'll deal with the people sent by the old man. Believe me, leave everything to me. I'll do my best to handle it. Okay, then wait a moment. I'll come out right away. After hanging up the phone, Chi-Yu's aura clearly became gloomy, and a cold light flashed in his eyes. Su-Ching looked at Chi-Yu's pondering expression. She suddenly realized that the man in front of her was really a ruffian. Just now, when he was on the phone with Ming Ming, he exuded a strong self-confidence that was definitely not something a ruffian could have. At this moment, Chi became a lot more mysterious in her heart. Not long after, Ming Ming and Shun Yun walked out together. Beside them were two tall Qing Bei students. They were both very handsome and dressed appropriately. They were constantly talking to Ming Ming and Shun Yun, especially the male student standing beside Ming Ming. Not only did he have a handsome appearance, he also had broad shoulders and a strong body. His whole body exuded the vitality of youth. Su-Ching asked probingly, Don't you want to know who those two people are? Chi-Yu shook his head and said, In my heart, they're just passers-by A and passers-by B. They don't have any meaning. At this moment, Ming Ming and Shun Yun had already seen him and Su-Ching. The two girls immediately quickened their steps. Chi-Yu faintly heard Ming Ming say to the boy beside her, Don't follow me. My boyfriend is here. Hearing this, Chi-Yu couldn't help but reveal a knowing smile. Ming Ming's brows seemed to have an additional faint worry. It was clear that the Greek people had caused her quite a bit of trouble. The boy beside her had a change in expression. He raised his head and looked at Chi-Yu. From his eyes, Chi-Yu saw provocation. Ming Ming. Chi-Yu went forward and pulled Ming Ming's hand. He slightly nodded to Shun Yun beside her. When Shun Yun saw Chi-Yu, his face couldn't help but turn pale. He seemed to be somewhat afraid. Clearly, Chi-Yu's strength at Tianxiao Mountain's Guai Jianzhou had left a deep impression on him. Ming Ming didn't struggle when Chi-Yu held her hand. Instead, she took the initiative to pull his arm and smiled. Let's go. Chi-Yu didn't even look at the boy beside her and walked towards Su-Ching with Ming Ming. Ming Ming, how can I not be compared to him? You actually chose him and not me. The tall boy's voice sounded quite pleasant. He anxiously blocked in front of Chi-Yu and Ming Ming. Ming Ming frowned and said, Don't pester me anymore. I already told you, I have a boyfriend. In my eyes, he is better than you in everything. You can't compare to him at all. This should be enough, right? The boy's face became pale. He angrily pressed down on Chi-Yu. His eyes seemed to be spitting fire. Chi-Yu snorted and said, Seeing that you are a student of Qing Bei, I'll give you 3 seconds. Immediately disappear from my eyes. Were you? Talk to me like that. If you have the ability, let's fight one-on-one. The boy was clearly not intimidated by Chi-Yu. He took out all the anger he felt from Ming Ming on Chi-Yu. Chi-Yu sneered and said, One-on-one? With just you? The other boy who followed Shun Yun said, What? You don't dare? If you don't dare, then leave Ming Ming. Senior is the president of the judo club. Even if there were 10 of you, you wouldn't have a chance. Chi-Yu disdainfully glanced at him and said, Just based on what you said, you don't have the qualifications to chase after a girl. A man and a woman are together, not because of other factors, but because of feelings. Don't tell me that if I can't beat him in a one-on-one fight, I have to give Ming Ming to him? Ming Ming is my girlfriend, not a commodity. 3 seconds are up. I'll give you one last chance. The tall boy stared at Chi-Yu with a burning gaze. It was clear that he had no intention of moving away. Chi-Yu nodded slightly. Just as he took a step forward, he discovered that Ming Ming's grip on his hand tightened. She shook her head at him. Chi-Yu smiled and said, Don't worry, I know what I'm doing. After all, there's nothing wrong with loving someone. He just shouldn't have fallen in love with my woman. As he spoke, he stretched out his left hand to push the boy in front of him. The tall boy was worthy of being the president of the judo club. When he saw Chi-Yu pushing towards him, he wasn't surprised. Instead, he was happy. For him, this seemed to be a good opportunity to show off. When Chi-Yu's hand pushed toward his chest, he crossed his hands and bit Chi-Yu's wrist. With one hand, he pulled Chi-Yu in his direction, and with the other hand, he grabbed Chi-Yu's elbow joint. In his mind, as long as he used this joint technique, Chi would immediately fall to the ground and beg for mercy. Unfortunately, his mind didn't hold up in front of Chi-Yu. Chi-Yu's hand didn't change its position. He let the tall boy grab his arm, but no matter how much strength the tall boy used, his hand still maintained its position and pushed towards the tall boy's chest. Chi-Yu's movements weren't fast, but when the tall boy felt his strength, he realized that he couldn't stop him. His body was pushed back step by Chi-Yu. He used almost all of his strength, but he still couldn't change the situation in front of him. Just as he was about to reach Su Qing, Chi-Yu's right hand moved to the side. The tall boy's body was suddenly thrown 7 or 8 meters away. He fell to the ground and let out a muffled groan. "You overestimate yourself," Chi-Yu said indifferently. His eyes lit up at this moment because he saw a large off-road vehicle with a military plate driving towards the entrance of Qingbei University from the other end of the street. It wasn't Jita's car, but Chi-Yu guessed that it must be to pick up Ming Ming. He lightly patted Ming Ming's hand and said, "Leave everything to me." When the tall boy stood up, his eyes looked a little dazed. Although Chi-Yu threw him, he used a lot of force. It looked heavy, but he wasn't actually injured. The other boy saw that the judo club's president was thrown out and was immediately shocked. He hurriedly ran over to help him up. The two of them looked at each other helplessly, turned around, and walked into the school. Their unrequited love on campus finally drew an imperfect end. "You're here to pick up Ming Ming, right?" Shenyun asked. When Chi-Yu saw Shenyun, he couldn't help but think of the day when her father suddenly attacked him and injured Ming Ming. "I'm here to pick up Ming Ming, and I'm also looking for you for something," Shenyun said with some surprise. "Looking for me?" Chi-Yu nodded and said, "I need your help." Shenyun nodded and said, "I need your help." Shenyun looked deeply at Chi-Yu and said, "Then why don't you directly bring it up to my grandfather? Aren't our 4 great families already?" Her voice was very low, so Su Qing couldn't hear her. Chi-Yu smiled indifferently and said, "Because I don't trust your grandfather. Wait a moment, I'll talk to you after I take care of something." He had no choice but to stop his conversation with Shenyun because the off-road vehicle with the military plate had already arrived. The door opened, and 3 people jumped out. Among the 3, Chi-Yu recognized one of them. The person who came out from the passenger seat was Heavenly Soul, who was dressed in colorful clothes and looked like a little hooligan. Chi-Yu didn't recognize the other 2 people. They were all tall men, but their auras were completely different. The man who came out from the driver's seat was about 1.8 meters tall and looked very stocky. His hands caught Chi-Yu's attention the most. His hands were obviously full of strength, and his palms were very wide and thick. They didn't even match his 1.8 meters figure. The other man who came out from the back looked more refined. However, his aura was very cold. His entire body was like a sharp blade, and his entire body emitted a cold aura. Needless to say, these 2 were also experts among the infernal souls. Big Brother Heavenly Soul. Chi-Yu smiled and greeted him. Heavenly Soul looked at Chi-Yu with a helpless expression. "The old man guessed that you would be here, so he asked us to pick up Ming Ming. We're all brothers. Don't make things difficult for us, okay?" Chi-Yu smiled and said, "Why would I make things difficult for you, Big Brother Heavenly Soul? Aren't you here to pick up Ming Ming? Just bring me along. I haven't been to the old man's place for some time. Let's take a look at him, shall we?" Heavenly Soul looked at Chi-Yu's flawless smile and said, "Are you really just going to see the old man? Chi-Yu, don't make things difficult for me as your brother. I've heard about you and Ming Ming from the mechanical soul. Everything is for the benefit of the country. You're still young. Why should a man worry about not having a wife?" Upon hearing this, Chi-Yu's expression changed. "Big Brother Heavenly Soul, I've always treated you as my brother. Don't you think that this is a little too much? If it were you, and your wife wanted to marry a Westerner for the benefit of the country, would you do it?" This, Heavenly Soul, was speechless. That's right. If this happened to me, how would I handle it? The other 2 men who came with Heavenly Soul were seeing Chi-Yu for the first time. The man who got out of the driver's seat said, "Get out of the way. Don't get in our way." He was very unhappy with Chi-Yu's impolite questioning of Heavenly Soul and raised his hand to grab Chi-Yu's shoulder. Chiyu naturally knew that those who came with Heavenly Soul were definitely not people that the guy from the judo club could compare to. He snorted coldly, shook his shoulder, and changed his position. Big brother Heavenly Soul, if you don't want your companions to get hurt, make them behave. Heavenly Soul frowned slightly and said to the man, "Stop. Why are you still so rash? Chiyu, let me introduce you. This is the Earth Soul, and the other is the Blade Soul. They are both in charge of fighting in our Yanhuang Soul. They originally belonged to the Earth Soul team. My brothers went out to carry out missions, so I captured them at the last minute. Together, we will protect Ming Ming's safety." Chiyu said calmly, "Protect Ming Ming? Then the person you should be guarding against should be me. Big brother Heavenly Soul, I won't make things difficult for you. You have two choices now. One is for you to bring me and Ming Ming back. The other is for the three of you to defeat me and bring Ming Ming away. But I have to remind you that fists and legs have no eyes. If I don't control my strength, please apologize in advance. So what if it was a Yin Huang Soul? No one could take Ming Ming away from me." Chiyu already had this thought in his heart. He decided that before Lin Yifan's matter was resolved, he would not let Ming Ming leave his side. Heavenly Soul looked helplessly at Chiyu and said, "Brother, is there no third way? Isn't this making things difficult for me?" Chiyu shook his head and said, "I'm sorry, big brother Heavenly Soul. I have always respected the old master. But this matter concerns my future happiness. How can I give up? I will definitely consider the interests of the country, but I have my own way of dealing with this. I will not let Ming Ming go. I'm not going with you to destroy anything. I just want to accompany Ming Ming to see that guy." Heavenly Soul looked deeply at Chiyu and said, "From a man's point of view, I admire you. Indeed, as a man, he should protect his loved ones. But from a man's point of view, I have no choice but to bring Ming Ming with me. The old master knew that you would appear here, so he sent the three of us. The old master said that besides Ming Ming, we can agree to any other request of yours." Chiyu smiled. "No request can compare to Ming Ming's position in my heart." Ming Ming had been standing behind Chiyu the whole time. When she heard what he said, her gaze turned gentle. She did not know why, but she was suddenly not worried about the matter between her and the Greek side. The man standing in front of her gave her a strong sense of security. Just like what he said, she would leave everything to him. Earth Soul could not hold it in any longer. "Captain Heavenly Soul, it's more important to complete the mission. Let's not waste any more time." As he spoke, Blade Soul had unknowingly appeared on the other side of Tianhan. The three of them formed a triangle around Chiyu. At this moment, a soft voice was suddenly heard. "Even if it's the military, they can't fight in front of our Qingbei University." Su Dong smiled as he walked out of Qingbei University. As a teacher, he wore a neat suit and looked refined. He looked like a typical pretty boy. As he spoke, Su Dong had already walked to Chiyu's side. He completely blocked Ming Ming behind him. "Why? Team leader Heavenly Soul, are you bullying us? Our boss is not that easy to bully." When Heavenly Soul saw Su Dong, his expression changed. Previously, he had been able to complete the mission successfully because Su Dong and Hai Ruyue had arrived in time. Although he only had a rough understanding of Su Dong's strength, he knew that this sissy in front of him was not easy to deal with. It was not a coincidence that Su Dong had appeared in time. After Chiyu left the villa, Hai Ruyue was worried and immediately called him. That was why he could appear in front of Qingbei University so quickly. Just as Heavenly Soul was hesitating, a cold voice came from Sword Soul. "Do you know the consequences of stopping us from completing the mission?" Su Dong smiled and said, "I don't know, but I really want to know." He was born in the Su family of Jiangsu. Although he looked weak, he was fearless. Even his grandfather could not control him. Although he knew that Yin Huang Soul was extraordinary, he was not worried at all. However, he wasn't worried at all. He didn't believe that the country would fall out with the Easter Guardians. A cold light flashed in Sword Soul's eyes, and his entire body became sharper. 3 cold lights shot towards Shu Dong without warning. Sword Soul only had one ability. No matter what it was, it could be used as a sword. Although the 3 sharp cold lights were only 3 strands of hair, their penetrative power was not to be underestimated. After all, this was the main street. He could only use this method of attack to not attract attention. Sword Soul's attack was not that simple. After the 3 cold lights, another 5 cold lights shot towards Chiyu. After that, more than 10 cold lights completely enveloped the two of them. Although the 3 waves of attacks came one after another, they were all completed before the first wave arrived. This interval in between was where the power of the attacks manifested. A layered attack was much more difficult to resist than a single wave of attacks. Naturally, Chiyu and Su Dong would not care about such an attack. Just as the two of them were about to make a move, a layer of phantom suddenly burst out from the gap between them. It seemed to be a barrier formed by countless hands. The hand shadows covered a very wide area. In an instant, the nearly 20 cold lights were completely swallowed by the hand shadows. Not only was Sword Soul stunned, but even Chiyu and Su Dong were equally surprised. When the barrier-like hand shadows disappeared, a short and fat figure squeezed out from the gap between them and stood between them. Fatso's face still looked a little childish. He was dressed in a student's uniform and carried a huge school bag on his shoulder. His left hand was holding the bag strap, and his right hand was deep in front of him, holding a handful of hair. He curled his lips and said, "Damn, who's so blind to even dare to attack my boss?" This Fatso, whose body was almost the width of one side, was none other than Chiyu's little brother, Vol. This was the first time Chiyu had seen Vol display his ability. Although the Sword Soul's attack just now could not pose a threat to him, he could tell from the sound of the light breaking through the air that it was full of energy. However, Vol seemed to have used only one hand to block all the attacks. Even Chiyu and Su Dong had to admit that the dexterity of his hands was inferior. Just like how a rabbit's ability was its legs, a mouse's ability was its hands. As the saying went, a mouse was born to burrow. What did it rely on a burrow? Wasn't it just grabbing forward? Although Vol's hands were still as short and thick as before, his fingers had already changed greatly under the effect of the thundercloud force of the ascending mouse mantra. Chiyu looked at the surprised faces of the Sky Soul trio and smiled. "Come, let me introduce you. This is my brother, Vol." The Sky Soul smiled bitterly. "It seems that you came prepared today." One Chiyu was enough to give him a headache, and now there were 2 more who were obviously not weak. Although the Sky Soul was confident that all the Yellow Flame Souls were top experts, they seemed weak in front of the 3 people in front of him. "Vol, didn't I tell you not to swear? You're a student." A slender figure appeared behind Vol. From her pair of long legs that were far from ordinary people's, one could see that she was not comparable. The Sky Soul's pupils shrank. He thought to himself, this is not the end. How many experts did Chiyu bring? When Vol saw Modi, it was not like a mouse meeting a rabbit, but like a mouse meeting a cat. He quickly agreed and gave up his position to Modi. "Captain Sky Soul, although I also belong to the national system, I may not be able to help you today. I'm really sorry. Ming Ming is one of us. No matter what, we can't let her marry to the West. Chiyu, Ming Ming, Big Brother Guan supports you." A black Audi stopped next to the Sky Soul's off-road vehicle. Guan Ping poked his head out. He was even wearing his white work coat. It was obvious that he had rushed here. Looking at the Zodiac Guardian God warriors, Ming Ming's eyes became moist. The Sky Soul's eyes were also moist. However, Ming Ming was moved, while the Sky Soul was so depressed that he was about to cry. He was now sure that he could not take Ming Ming away from these people. Chiyu wanted to sing. He wanted to sing a very old song. Unity is strength.